Good evening. I'm going to call our regular board meeting to order. Kelly Douglas, please take roll.
Thank you. Director Wyatt.
Here.
Director Shoemaker.
Here.
Director Salvaggio.
Here.
Vice Chair Vidal.
Here.
Chair Sloop.
Here.
Thank you.
So before we begin, I want to present moving Dr. Hughes from the Dr. Hughes in the budget calendar from the end towards right after our public comment, or right after science curriculum adoption. Is everybody okay with that? All right. So we're going to start with communications and Riverside High School, Apollonia Munoz.
Good evening, members of the board, administrators, and guests. Here is your Riverside High School representative. Thank you for taking the opportunity to let me share updates about the past couple of weeks and all the activities that our school has been looking forward to. This month, we had our spring production of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and in total in participation, we had 27 students from across all 4 grades, involving crew and cast. We'd like to thank the Howard family, the Cost family, and the Larson family for their support in the RHS Theater. This month, our leadership team divided into smaller groups to plan different activities for the school community. We had an assembly group who hosted a fun spirit assembly this Wednesday, and an Earth Day group who hosted a campus cleanup session. And on April 22nd was Vice President Appreciation Group, who we worked as a school to make a card for Miss Wilhelm, and a belated thanks to her and everything she does for our school community. We also had a poetry appreciation group who is planning a Poem in Your Pocket celebration during the last week of April. This year was our first year with class representatives, and it's been very great so far. Elections for next year's class reps will be held in May. Also, we have prom scheduled this Saturday, April 25th at the Oswego Hall at Low Rack, and our theme is Moonlight Garden. With our seniors graduating right around the corner, it's time for juniors, including myself, to begin thinking the next steps of our lives. We have been fortunate enough to have our counselor, Mr. Bean, arrange visits from University of Arizona, Oregon Institute of Technology, Warner Pacific, CCC, and the School of Visual Arts, and another visit from the University of Las Vegas coming up soon. Also, our college and career classes were able to visit PCC, which was a great opportunity for all our juniors. We have also had frequent visits from professionals in different fields come to talk to us during that class. In Rotary, our peace pole was finally installed on school grounds on April 16th. We are still in the process of unveiling with a ceremony, which will happen soon, and officer elections are tomorrow. Our past bake sale generated over $600, which is a new record for our school. Last week was also Oregon Skills USA Conference down in Albany. We entered 2 previous state champions from last year who delivered great performances. One sophomore, Kaylin, placed 3rd overall in extemporaneous speech, and another placed 1st in early childhood education and top 10 in prepared speech. Kaylin automatically qualified for the national competition in Atlanta and is also elected the Skills USA State Officer for her 2nd year in a row. In the world of sports, Finley Friedrichs, one of our winter sports athletes, was awarded the OSAA and the Oregon Army National Guard Award for Most Valuable Team Player. This award was given to 1 athlete per classification of the state level, so Finley was a 3A award winner, an amazing honor and absolutely well-deserved. Our girls and boys tennis teams have been working hard and improving for this season. We have athletes competing at a varsity level for the first time this season, and tomorrow the boys will play at home and the girls will have an away game. Our boys golf team is also competing well and are led by one of the 9th graders. Today they played a game and they have district competitions in the beginning of May. Our baseball and softball athletes are combined with Milwaukee High School, where they are working hard and enjoying the experience. They have games last week at Wilsonville High School and play a game this week at Hillsborough. Our track and field athletes have also been competing well this season, facing opponents from the 1A level all the way to the 6A level. We currently have athletes ranked in the top 10 in state for javelin, discus, and long jump. Their next track meet is Wednesday at Valley Catholic. Thank you for your continued support in our school, and I hope you have a great month and see you next time.
Awesome.
We have Brody from West Linn.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. And wow, I can't believe I'm saying this, but happy April. As always, our students at Westland High School have been killing it, so I've got plenty of news to share with you all today. Our charity fundraiser for St. Baldrick's was a huge success. We managed to raise a whopping $2,600, all being put towards bettering the lives of children with cancer. A huge thank you to all of our students and staff. Our thespian troupe 1915 took a trip to Salem to cheer on our state qualifiers Lucy Laviolette and Miriam Kelly, who both performed at the state festival. The troupe got to participate in some amazing activities like a backstage tech challenge, watching a cool drag queen show, and learning some kicks, tricks, and flips for the stage. Auditions for our spring shorts plays were held, and I have to say, these shows are a must-see. Words, Words, Words is a story about Dr. David Rosenbaum, who has kidnapped and named several wild chimpanzees and imprisoned them with typewriters until they type up the entirety of Hamlet. Our other story act, Whistle Stop, shows the story of the regulars at the Whistle Stop Diner scrambling to prepare for a visit from the latest presidential candidate. But tensions and misunderstandings threaten to divide the small town, putting the candidate's visit and the community as a whole in jeopardy. The cool thing about shorts is that they are both fully student-directed and backstage managed, to the costumes, makeup, and even the set design. Come watch our talented actors, directors, and tech crew thrive May 13th, 14th, and 15th. Speaking of performing artists, choir, orchestra, and band had another round of successful spring concerts, while also preparing for their state qualifying competitions. It's sure been a busy season in the performing arts world. Our ASB elections are right around the corner. I have here today some of our lovely candidates, Miriam Almadyati, Lainey Moore, and Bianca Perry. I can say with confidence that next year is in great hands. May Day, our 100-year-old tradition, is in the works. With this year's theme inspired by Greek architecture and a hint of Greek mythology, we are proud to present May Day, the Age of Olympus. It will be a night of music, dance, and especially community. We hope to see you there April 30th. Linn-Wilsonville Multicultural Night success, since I'm on the topic of community events. The night was full of cultural food to all of the stunning performances. It was truly a night to remember. We are so excited to watch this annual event blossom into something that connects and strengthens our community even further throughout the years. Now for some sports events. Girls and boys lacrosse, tennis, boys baseball, as well as track and field seasons have been taking off. A huge congrats to all of our Lions' hard work, especially our track and fielders Eleanor Wyatt, Cooper Roms, and our boys 4x100 relay team for each setting brand new Westland High School records at recent competitions. And most importantly, our girls basketball and girls snowboarding state champions. I couldn't be more proud to be a Lion. And before I wrap things up, there is one last acknowledgement I'd like to make. A massive congratulations to our yearbook team for winning the NSPA Pacemaker Award for the first time in West Linn-Wilsonville district history. To put this award into perspective, it's basically like winning an Oscar. So another huge congratulations to them. And yeah, I can't believe next month is our final board meeting together. As always, thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you take the time to go and enjoy some of this beautiful spring weather we're having. Have a blessed rest of your April, and I'll see you all next month. Oh yeah, they're actually right here joining us today. If you all want to stand up and wave, that'd be awesome. Truly an amazing accomplishment.
Right, and Wilsonville High School is Avery Eckley.
Good evening. My name is Avery Eckley, and tonight I will be filling in for our ASB president, Ryan Williams, on behalf of Wilsonville High School. Ryan has got ahead and prepared a visual for you guys tonight, but I am so excited to be here sharing about all the wonderful things that have been happening in our community, both during the school day and beyond. It's remarkable how quickly the year is moving and how little time we have left together. As the saying goes, April showers bring May flowers, and this season truly reflects a time of growth, transition, and anticipation across our school community. Athletically, we are fully immersed in the spring season. Our track and field team represented Wilsonville at the Oregon Relays, continuing to compete at a high level. Over spring break, baseball traveled to California, where they not only enjoyed time in the sun, but also faced strong competition that pushed them to grow. Softball has been competing across the state, continuing to build a strong reputation for Wilsonville athletics, and even putting up good games against 6A schools. Girls lacrosse recently returned from a trip to Bend, turning their game against Summit into a memorable weekend. Meanwhile, both our boys and girls golf teams have remained consistent, while another strong showing at their recent tournament. Our final unified sport of the year, unified kickball, has begun practicing, and soon our community will be able to go and support them as well. Beyond athletics, our clubs have been especially active and impactful. Recently, Westland hosted a multicultural night that Brody shared with you guys, which we were inviting our BSU, API, and MECA clubs to participate in. Students had the opportunity to share their cultural foods through their cultures through food, traditions, and conversation, while also connecting with peers from another community. Looking ahead, this Wednesday, Wilsonville's BSU, Black Student Union, will attend Beckman Creek's Multicultural Night, where they hope to serve as mentors and role models for younger students. BSU will also conclude a busy month with a movie night fundraiser this Saturday in the PAC, featuring Hidden Figures, along with food, games, and activities for families. Additionally, this Sunday, Model UN will travel to Eugene for their annual conference, where students will engage in debate, develop resolutions, and gain a glimpse into college life at the University of Oregon. This time of year also brings important academic milestones and opportunities. Scholarship application deadlines are quickly approaching, I should know, encouraging many of our seniors to reflect on their goals and take meaningful steps toward their own futures. At the same time, state testing for freshmen and juniors is just wrapping up, and AP testing is around the corner, beginning in May. We are also proud to recognize the conclusion of our Schnitzer Care student grant-making opportunity, which Wilsonville's Leadership 2 class was able to be immersed into this past year. Totaling over $15,000 after student fundraising, the students have decided to distribute the funds across 3 organizations: Refit, Project 48, and Dress for Success, which are local nonprofits that benefit all aspects of the community. And even with these donations, we were also able to give back around $3,000 to our own student body organizations for the use of various purposes. Among all the ways for students to get involved, seniors especially are looking forward to the end of the year. In terms of school spirit and tradition, we are currently in the midst of Spring Fest. While the details of the weekend remain under wraps, the excitement and anticipation continue to build. Students were encouraged to compete in pairs and perform variety talent show acts during recent and upcoming assemblies. Following Spring Fest, we will begin May with our Night in the City themed prom at the Shawn Garden Dance Center, an event many students are eagerly looking forward to. We also anticipate Senior Decision Day, a meaningful celebration where we recognize the diverse paths our seniors are choosing as they approach for life beyond high school, which will be held on May 1st before school. Lastly, ASB elections took place today, which I was actually just informed with. So next year, you will be hearing from Avery Nowitzki, who will be our new ASB president. This is very important milestone and transition in our leadership programs, but we are very excited for next year. It's a full circle moment to reflect on past campaigns and how now watch the next group of students of leaders step forward with new ideas and perspectives. So thank you all for your time and your continued support. I may not be here next meeting, but I always appreciate the opportunity to share what is going on with Wilsonville.
Okay, so before we move on to recognitions is the time, if you guys want, you're excused, and or you can stay and listen for the recognitions. So thank you. Thanks. Dr. Spencer Iams, would you like to present?
Love to present because I'm so excited. I'm just going to give you a little overview and then I'm going to turn it over to the people that have really made this possible. In thinking about the school board and district goals, we were thinking a lot about board goal number 3 and ways we continue to partner with our community in new and exciting ways, and also thinking about high priority to our school board members, to our administrators, to really to everyone in our community. And that is, how do we do a better job of supporting students' mental health? And so I am very excited to present to you Laura Nappy, our own Career and Technical Education Coordinator, and Sarah Rombeck from the United We Heal organization to share with you this exciting new partnership and even a couple of students that may have just completed this to be honored for their completion tonight. So Laura and Sarah, come on up and share what this is all about.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. My name is Laura Nappy, and I'm the CTE coordinator for the Linn-Wilsonville School District, and I also teach in the Education CTE program. And it is my pleasure to be here tonight to celebrate a collaborative partnership between United We Heal and the Linn-Wilsonville School District. We are also here to recognize the hard work and dedication of 2 high school students who have already completed the pre-apprenticeship program, and there are other students, about a dozen, who are working behind the scenes right now. First, I'm going to summarize the partnership, and then United We Heal will share more details about the program, and Wilsonville High School student Sochi will be talking about her experience. So as you know, behavioral health is a high need area in our region for professionals. A way to bridge this gap is to have partnerships between school districts, behavioral health organizations, and community colleges. Together, we can provide an opportunity where high school students can participate in a pre-apprenticeship program. High school students get an opportunity to explore this path to see if it's a fit for them, and they also earn college credit and an industry-recognized credential at the end. So there are really 4 key players to this partnership. United We Heal, they are the ones who manage the pre-apprenticeship program. And then the Linn-Wilsonville School District, the AP psychology teachers and education CTE teachers, and the Riverside High School health occupation CTE teacher plays a role in this, and we help promote the program to students and support them while they're in the program. Also, the AP credit and dual credit counts toward this program. And then the third partner is Clackamas Community College. They help enroll students in the college credit, and they provide academic support for students as well. And then the fourth key player is the high school students. They're really going above and beyond their normal high school coursework, and they're participating in over 30 hours of career training in order to earn this certificate. So I'll hand this over now to Sarah with United We Heal.
Hello, thank you for having us here. During the pre-apprenticeship, high school students complete 3 behavioral health classes. These are either taken at their high school or through Clackamas Community College, depending on each school. Any of the courses taken at CCC are paid fully by United We Heal. Students also participate in an asynchronous online career training course that's provided by us. This course covers topics like workers' rights, behavioral health, career exploration, HIPAA, ethics, trauma-informed care, resume building, interview skills, and preparing students with both knowledge and practical tools for the workforce. After graduation, students can choose from several paths. They can continue on their education with college, taking those college credits with them. They can enter the workforce directly and have an advanced standing, or they can engage with United We Heal through advanced opportunities. Our post-high school pathways include AmeriCorps Youth Mental Health Service Program through their school districts, as well as a QMHA and a CADC apprenticeship programs, allowing students to earn certifications just 1 year after high school, cost-free. For those who want to continue on in their education, we also offer a bachelor's and master's degree apprenticeship programs, providing a completely debt-free pathway to advanced careers. In your district, we have had 21 students enroll in the program. 3 have already graduated. 3 to 5 are set to graduate this June, and another 13 more this next school year. So I'd like to invite Sochi up.
Hi, my name's Sochi. I'm a sophomore at Wilsonville High School. I was the first one to graduate from my district, which I'm really happy to be here, representing my school, the program, and the CTE education program. I was a freshman when I began taking the CTE education program with Child Development 1 and 2. I really grew passionate about what was being taught and what was like the program really focused on children development and growth, being able to go into a classroom and really seeing it in a classroom setting and being able to participate. So I did decide to take Education 1 and 2. This was the point where I really fell in love with just working with kids and being able to understand that teacher-student bond and just seeing how you can really understand a children's like behavioral health through this. And earlier this year is where I decided to join the pre-apprentice program with United We Heal. This made me see things way more differently. I learned things way more better. I was taking the things that I was learning from my AP psychology class, my CTE education program. I really took this as an opportunity because it's really like amazing being a high school student and being able to get these like skills, learn all these things that most people wait till after high school, and just being a sophomore and being able to do these things right now is really just an advantage to my future. And it's made me realize that I would like to take these skills that I've learned, and if I choose to become a teacher, which is one of my goals later in my career, I will apply the things that I've learned through the program and the education program. And thank you guys so much for having me here.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Sochi and Arwen up. We'd love to present certificates for the graduation. I'm going to let Adriana, the program manager, handle that.
Yeah.
Linger here just for a second by the podium. Yep. I imagine some our board members might have a few words and questions for you.
Yeah. Director Wyatt?
Well, congratulations. This is really exciting. This is the first I've heard about the program, and I can't wait to learn even more. But I love hearing about this happening in our district, and I hope when you become a teacher that you will apply back here in the district, and that we will soon have you as a teacher in our district, because seeing your passion and your interest in this is really inspiring. So thank you.
Director Salvaggio?
Thank you for going through this and kind of being a proof of concept. It's a great program, and you all have chosen a very rigorous, but I'm sure rewarding path. First, I'd like to say that I think the whole board is particularly proud of you. I'm not empowered to speak for the whole board, but I certainly am. I also want to point out more broadly that this is a fantastic example of the good results that happen when we reach out and branch out and incorporate not just programs within the school district and among schools, but this is a partnership between the district. This is a partnership between local unions. This is a partnership between employers and the state. And so this is a great example of a lot of stakeholders coming together in order to right-size resources and create the kind of job pathways that we need to see more of. And it's inspiring to see you guys at the forefront of that. And thank you for showing us the way.
Vice Chair Vidal?
Well, I'm definitely proud of both of you. Like Director Salvaggio said, please tell your friends to participate in the program too, because there is a huge behavioral health shortage in the state and in the United States. And the more people we can get that have a heart for this work, the better. So it's amazing that you're starting so early in your life doing something that you can begin your career right when you get out of high school and help kids immediately. And you know, behavioral health, it's even, there's even a greater need, and I'm sure you already know this, for kids. So this program is so important, and I'm so excited. You probably saw my huge smile during that. I'm so excited that we're doing this, and the more students we can get enrolled, the better. So thank you all for your really hard work, and it's fantastic.
Yes, again, I'm so excited about this program. I had not heard about it, and I really believe in the career technical education programs that our district offers. And I was just reading up there, and United We Heal, I mean, there's so many opportunities that opens up for you and your peers, and it is so important, as Vice Chair Vidal said. Oregon has just this huge mental and behavioral health crisis, and our access is very, very limited for teens and youth and young adults. And here you are just stepping in and learning these wonderful life skills, but also opening up opportunities where you can help your peers. And so I'm so excited about this program. I'm so in awe of just United We Heal. I had not heard about this program. So I'm very excited to see the path that you guys take, and would love to hear from you. And if you become teachers or, you know, involved in what you've learned here. So thank you so much. Dr. Ludwig?
Well, I'll just echo what everyone said. First of all, Laura, thank you for your work and always finding these networks and partnerships for our students. Sarah and your team, thank you for connecting with us and working alongside. To our two graduates, way to go. Just echo everything that you heard from the board. Thank you for your curiosity, your extra hard work above and beyond your courses. It really shows your tenacity and your perseverance and your work ethic. And, you know, you look at that path, you're right up there in that blue, and there's a long, you know, way to go still, but really it's about opening doors. So whether this ends up in something with behavioral health or education, I promise you, whatever you've learned, you will take to whatever career, because it's really about understanding the human dynamic, about being introspective, about noticing what's happening around for others, taking a pause and thinking critically. So all these skills you're learning, you'll apply whatever career you go into. Of course, we'd love for you to go into education and be school counselors and, you know, make your way back here. But just so happy for you. Are your parents here tonight? Do a shout out. Could the parents stand? Thank you as well. Really. You know, our students take these risks and they believe in themselves and take these opportunities because they know that they have parents cheering them on, supporting them, the extra work and all that it entailed. So just so thrilled that your family got to go along on this ride with you, and congratulations. Thank you.
All right, board reports. We're going to go a little out of order. Vice Chair Vidal is going to the Wilsonville's State of the City. So would you like to go first?
Sure. I just have a few items. April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, and this evening during public comment, Laura from the Director of Operations and Community Engagement is here from the Children's Center. And the Children's Center serves children and families here in Clackamas County who've been impacted by child abuse and neglect. And they serve them through assessment, treatment, and prevention. 65% of the children they serve are school aged, 43% of those children are males, and 57% of those children are female. And all of them benefit from the therapy and healing they receive from the Children's Center. And our community benefits from the prevention that they learn from the Children's Center, knowing the signs to look for with child abuse and neglect. So thank you, Laura, for being here. My next update is surrounding the superintendent's evaluation. As vice chair, it is my role to oversee the superintendent's evaluation. So Director Shoemaker and I are partnering up, and we are going to start the second phase of superintendent's evaluation, and we'll be speaking to her leadership team this month. And then, of course, the directors will provide their feedback for Dr. Ludwig's evaluation as well before the summative evaluation in June. And then, like Chair Sloop said, I'm going to be leaving now for the State of the City in Wilsonville. So that's it. Thank you.
Director Wyatt?
Thank you. I wanted to use my time to share some things that I've been thinking about recently. We don't often get to, we never get to talk as a board about, school district business. And so I wanted to use this time to talk about some things I've been wrestling with as a board member. And it really is the balance between state direction and local control. And so what I've been thinking a lot about is the same underlying issue of who decides and with what resources. And so the first thing that came to mind for me was a New York Times podcast about the Mississippi Miracle, which talks about these really dramatic gains in early literacy. And those gains didn't come from local flexibility. They came from statewide mandates and consistent implementation. And so it's a reminder that when the state sets priorities, backs them up with resources, and follows through, outcomes can improve, especially for our youngest learners. But then at the same time here in Oregon, we're seeing a different kind of state intervention. Governor Tina Kotek's executive order restricts districts from using furlough days to manage budgets. And so this removes a tool that this district has used to preserve teaching positions and avoid deeper cuts. It's definitely not a perfect tool, but in a constrained system, it was a really practical trade-off that we had to make this fiscal year that reduced harm to students and preserved teaching positions. So something that I've been grappling with is that sometimes state leadership does drive meaningful progress, but sometimes state mandates limit our ability to make the least harmful decisions locally. And so this difference really comes down to alignment and support, not just direction. And at the end of the day, it's not just about governance philosophy. It's really about money and priorities. Our public education funding system is fundamentally misaligned with what we're asked to deliver. We're being asked to do more with fewer tools and increasingly with fewer choices. As a board, it's our responsibility to protect students, support educators, and steward this district responsibly. And to me, this means that we welcome state leadership when it comes with clarity, resources, and a path to better outcomes, but we also need the flexibility to navigate real financial constraints in ways that minimize harm locally. And until we address the underlying funding challenges, districts like ours will continue to face impossible trade-offs with limited authority to solve them. But the reason I'm sharing all of this is because I want to thank many people in our district for the work that's being done. Our board chair and vice chair continue to show up and speak out for our students, our teachers, and our community. Director Salvaggio's leadership on the Oregon School Board Association Board of Directors ensures that our district's voice is part of that statewide conversation. Superintendent Ludwig's engagement with the Coalition of Oregon School Administrators helps connect us to these broader policy discussions. I also really want to recognize the newly formed School Foundation. Their founding board has stepped up in a way that is so meaningful, and it really demonstrates how community-led efforts can be part of addressing these complex funding challenges. And finally, I just want to thank our voters. In recent years, this community has shown up, approved a local option levy and a capital bond to support our schools. In the broader conversations recently following the governor's unfunded mandate, one distinction that we're seeing across districts is clear. Communities that vote yes for their schools have more options and fewer harmful trade-offs than those that do not support. And this matters. It's something worth recognizing and building on as we move forward, because we know community investment doesn't solve everything, but it changes what is possible. So I share all of this as we head into budget season, as we continue to hear from districts across Oregon facing similar and often more severe challenges. These aren't isolated, they're systemic, and they reinforce the need for both strong advocacy and honest conversations about what it takes to sustainably fund public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Shoemaker.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief. I'm kind of nursing a little bit of a sore throat. You're welcome. People sitting next to me. I was at the middle school musical on Saturday night, and at intermission, I was outside with some folks, and they were talking about how talented our kids are, and I agreed, because our kids are talented, of course. But it occurs to me that kids are talented wherever they are, whatever community they live in. Kids have great potential. And what I was really seeing was opportunity. And I'm so happy that we provide opportunities for our students. And at this time of year, when we're talking about budgets, it makes me think all the more about the balance that we have to find between not only core instruction, and I don't mind at all that the state is now going to say that we need to report 3 times a year around achievement, because that's what we want anyway, right? And we need to pay attention to core instruction, but at the same time, our kids have lots of opportunities. And in the last week, when we had some nice weather, I was out and about more, and I don't know how many hundred kids I saw at track meets. And then after school, just the volume of kids that are on our fields that are just playing youth sports, it's just amazing. Our kids have opportunities, and it's so important. And it's not even always organized, but it's the opportunity part that I'm really struck by, as I think about how when someone says to me, our kids are awfully talented, I think I'm so grateful that they have opportunities to do what they're doing, and the guidance of so many caring adults in our communities to support it, as well as the caring adults that are in our schools. And as I said, I'm really thinking about that at budget time of year, about that all the trade-offs we're asked to make, at the same time remembering how important it is that we do well by our kids in lots of ways. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Director Salvaggio?
Well, I was also going to take a crack at the executive order around budgeting and furlough days, but I think Director Wyatt spoke much more eloquently than I was going to. So if you all just imagine that I spoke just as eloquently on that, I'd be appreciated. And I'm sure that the superintendent's going to have some things to say about it. So I don't need to, I think, echo what my colleagues have already said. I'm gone. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry. This past weekend, Scouting USA Pack 504 had their Pinewood Derby at Rosemont Ridge Middle School. They usually have their pack meetings at Riverside High. It was a fantastic example of the fact that this district plays plays multiple roles in the community. There's people, scouts, families from all over the district. Sometimes you go to Riverside, sometimes you go to Rosemont Ridge, but the district provided that avenue and that space, and everyone had a good time, except for, we won't get into what. And I don't know if I agree with that label of artificial intelligence, but I'm just going to use that phrase since that seems to be the industry standard. I heard from a student who was rightly inquiring about a lack of policy about in-classroom use of AI, to a constituent questioning the lack of policies around data collection and use, and reached out to the Oregon School Boards Association for some guidance on that. There are some model policies available that I'd like us to begin looking into. For the staff listening, the OSBA has labeled that IKJ. But admittedly, from OSBA, that's a basic framework that the district staff and stakeholders should further inform. And I'm very interested in moving forward on that at a future meeting. It's also only limited to in-classroom use by students and faculty, and not around broader concerns around the use of AI in campus generally, and especially the use of data. So I think it's very, very important to get ahead of these policies before industry use kind of digs in on it, before we have appropriate regulations and policies in place, because this is emerging technology. I had been hoping that the state would take the lead on this, but a bill last session to establish a state AI policy work group did not make it across the finish line. I would hope that we can get some kind of guidance and regulatory rules in place before we're facing a entrenched industry that is going to be much, much harder to set the tempo for. So that's something that I'm just going to call out to my colleagues as interested in working on. And that's my report.
Thank you. I just have a few brief comments to make this evening. I took some time to actually go through all of our board policies. I didn't realize how many we actually had. But I just wanted to mention that it's all encompassing. We have a child abuse reporting policy, and as Director Salvaggio said, there's also artificial intelligence that has some model of policies. And also, even with cameras on buses and in our classroom, there's a policy and an AR on that as well. So I wanted to start off with saying April is the Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, and we will have a special public comment by Laura Sisolek from the Children's Center, who will speak briefly during the beginning of our first public comment. And she will be sharing how their services help keep our kids safe and healthy. And as I mentioned, West Linn-Wilsonville does have a policy for suspected abuse of child, and it lists what the reporting requirements and criteria are. And I'm very excited or grateful for the opportunity to learn more from Laura's presentation during public comment. And as Director Salvaggio said, we as a board have received emails regarding the artificial intelligence and the use by both students and staff. And I see that artificial intelligence can serve as a valuable resource, but does not come without risks such as inaccurate information, bias, and then the concern for privacy concerns like on the internet. But it is becoming increasingly prevalent. I've even tapped into it and I've used it for some recipes. Like, I don't have a lot left in my refrigerator, so it's like, this is what I have. Please come up with a recipe for me. The district's teachers and leaders are continuing to meet to collaborate on AI guidance, which I'd like to learn more about. In addition, I'd like to explore policies which establish the clear expectations, accessibility, and responsibilities regarding AI use in schools by students and staff. And that is all I have for tonight. Dr. Ludwig.
PowerPoint there. Just go straight to the next slide. There's always so much that I can share about what's going on. I think our 3 high school students do a great job of capturing everything, but I always try and pick a few things to highlight. I usually talk about the high school theaters, and it was really fun to attend the middle school production, as Director Shoemaker mentioned. And they just did a fantastic job. Students from all 4 of our middle schools, as well as our charter school. And I just want to do a huge shout out to Julie Lane, who has the vision every year to pull all this together, an extraordinary amount of time on her part. And then 2 of her key people that she works with, Kaylee Porter, who helps around with all the music and choreography, and then Jillian Lane as well. So tremendous amount of parent volunteers, and really appreciate all the hard work that goes into that. Of course, our students with ISEF are continuing on. We have 6 now qualified for Science Fair in Phoenix, as we've been tracking that. And then we've got some students who qualified from robotics heading off to Houston. You heard from our high school students about others who are competing nationally. And we're just so proud of their efforts and their hard work. I do want to highlight that first International Culture Fair. Miriam, who was here, sitting here because she's also involved in student leadership, really was the instrument around getting that going with the affinity clubs. She's also on the District Equity Advisory Committee and has really been thinking about what it means for students to have a sense of place and space and pride in culture and heritage. So I want to thank Miriam for all of her work as a student on that. And next. I've mentioned that every board meeting I'd give you an update. You asked for it as well around primary schools transitions, and just want to let you know that we're still in April, so we're still kind of in this lengthy process around now looking at staff transfers. So we have a new boundary. That decision was made in January. Parents submitted transfer requests. We went through all of those, approved. Others are still kind of trickling in. And now we're taking a look at the enrollment at each of those primary schools and how to think about staffing. And of course, staff transfers are a contracted process that we do have to go through methodically, and it does take time. Staff have a right for an interview, and then principals make those considerations, and then the domino effect starts to happen. With one shift, another opening occurs. So we're working methodically through some of those. And it does take time. And we are hoping then that by May, we'll get even closer to being able to let staff know where they're going to be next year, particularly staff who have applied for Frog Pond and are hoping to help open that new school. We are tracking enrollment. This is the big question for all of us. It spurred a lot of our difficult decisions that we had to make this year, but it is a reality in Oregon, and we're continuing to track it. This graph probably looks very familiar to you by now. This was the 3 scenarios that Flow Analytics provided us in terms of the November update. And of course, where that arrow points, that's this year. So they took the most current data from this year, and then they have these 3 possible scenarios of where our enrollment might go. So we're kind of watching what's happening in alignment with those projections. Next. So either every day or every week, we can just kind of dip in and see where we are for next year. I do want to caution anyone watching from home, this is not done. This is as of Sunday. Yeah, I went into the program and just kind of thought, where are we in terms of a roll-up of enrollment for next year? We will still enroll students. We've got kindergarten families still coming, maybe some first grade families, people who are moving in. This is just an indication of the roll-up, as well as those who are kind of early on that path in terms of enrolling their children. If we were to open tomorrow with this data, we would be, of course, below what our current enrollment is. So we're eager to see that number tick up. But as you can already see, when this year we have 8,600 students and we've enrolled about 8,100, we are still a gap away and likely will be have a declined enrollment compared next year compared to this year. Next. Enrollment means funding, and I've been keeping you updated on where we are all year. That was one of your goals around entering the budget process early. That's why we were talking about it as early as October, November, and making some decisions in December. Budget committee will, you'll hear a little bit later about the calendar for that. But just a reminder, these were some of those adjustments, the big adjustments that we are making. So this won't be a surprise when you are in the budget process. These were ones that we had to put in front of you early on. It is a $9.5 million reduction now instead of a $10 million because we did keep the Chinese dual language program open. In terms of the reductions to staffing, as we work through these transfers, and interestingly, we're still every week getting a leave or a resignation or retirement that's kind of trickling in, which shifts things for us. But we are beginning to assemble the information that we need in order to determine, with these reductions that we make, would there be any reduction in force? And of course, there is statute and policy with any reduction in force that would come in front of the board. Next. I just sent out today a budget webinar. This is something I do annually where interested community members and families can listen to a little webinar about how budgets are put together in Oregon, how funding happens, and then it's contextualized into what we're looking at for this year. And then it ends with this opportunity for a survey for community members to give input. And I think you're all familiar with those survey results that then come. We take a look at them, and then they're also printed into our budget document, and all of that data is made available to the budget committee. So we encourage as many families or staff members to fill that out and give us some input as we work through the budget proposal for next year. Next. So I handed out to all of you, but you've seen it, I'm sure, electronically and in the news, a copy of the governor's executive order, which is really on the minds of a lot of folks right now. There were some definitions that were created that kind of make this distinction around student instructional time and hours of instructional time. And you know, right away, as soon as this came out, there was concern by quite a number of school districts about the implications for this school year. And the State Board of Education did make a temporary rule, at least holding off on some of the revisions that were in the executive order. That temporary rule will sunset after 180 days. And so it does give ODE more time to work with school districts around the implications of the executive order. But those two distinctions now around student instructional time, which means how much time are students on a school campus, bell to bell, versus hours of instructional time, which have to do with instruction with a teacher or a paraeducator or educational assistant that they are receiving. As some of you mentioned, there is also in this the language around removal of furlough days. And of course, we had 2 this year. We will be fine because our plan is to restore back next year to the level that we were at. So we just need to inform ODE that we're doing that. It also removes the use of waivers unless there's a national or state disaster or public health emergency. And then also the removal of professional development and conferences as hours of instructional time, which are currently allowable in statute. Next. So what does it mean for West Linn-Wilsonville? When you look at primary schools, the state requirement for hours of instructional time is 900 hours, and these will not change with the executive order. With our days and number of instructional minutes, and not counting recess and lunch, we do meet, just a little bit eking over there, we meet the state requirement. So we do not need the 30 hours of professional development or conferences to meet that 900-hour mark. With those, we're well over at 961. But we don't, how we stand right now, we don't need those. The same in middle school, also has 900 hours. And you can see on the chart with the 171 days and instructional minutes, not counting recess or lunch. Middle school also meets much more sizably the 900 hours. We do not need the professional development or conference time to qualify in those instructional hours, but should we use them, we are well over. For our high schools, however, we do count the 30 hours of professional development to meet the threshold. And some of that has to do with how we organize our finals days, giving students more opportunity to take a final, go home, do some studying. So those are half days. So there are some ways that we've organized our school year for students. Feedback from them around how that feels during finals week to do their best. So we will have some work to do in those with our high school around meeting those state hours once the professional development can no longer be counted. We don't have conferences at high school, so we haven't used those hours before, but we certainly have used the professional development hours. There's also the allowability in grades K through 3 to use up to 60 minutes of recess. We've never really needed that, or 60 hours of recess. We've never really needed that, so I didn't put that on there. So that's just to let you know where we are. And as always, whenever there's an executive order or a new legislation, there's the unpacking of the details and everybody's interpretation, and then working with ODE and the State Board of Education as they kind of flesh this out and begin to work with districts on what this means. And next. So I just bring this forward because you did pass the school calendar in February for next year. And if you recall, when you pass the school calendar, there's always a reference around instructional time in there. And we have conversation with you about how we, the calendar, with which we give you 3 samples. It includes all the professional development in there. It includes conferences, how many days we have, everything that was in that table. And then your approval of that calendar is a way of approving those instructional hours. And we make mention of that in the memo. Just want to let you know that as we unpack this executive order, if there are any changes we need to make to the calendar, we will come back and we'll have more conversation about instructional hours and the implications on our school calendar, and then getting that, working on that with our associations as well as with our community. And that's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda.
All right, there's a first and a second to approve the consent agenda. Kelly Douglas, take a vote, please.
Thank you. Director Wyatt.
Aye.
Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're a little ahead of schedule, but we're going to move into public comment. And Laura, so you'll get 6 minutes or so just to give your presentation. Do you have a slide?
I do. I have some to pass out. Oh, and they're not projected.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I thought they would be, but this is.
Yeah.
I've got a copy. Sorry for folks. I was asked to bring 7.
Yeah.
So. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today, and appreciate Chair and Vice Chair's reference to Child Abuse Prevention Month. That's why we're out here as the Children's Center. We're visiting with a few school districts during this month to really share some information, both about the work that we do within our center, and to highlight the importance of prevention, and talk a little bit about some of the community-based prevention work that we do, some of which are with schools, and we'd love to sort of explore whether there are any opportunities with West Linn-Wilsonville. So the Children's Center's mission is to work with the community to end child abuse and neglect through prevention, treatment, and assessment. We're working to build a world where all children feel safe, valued, and heard. We are a private nonprofit agency that serves all of Clackamas County and only Clackamas County. And we're part of what's called the multidisciplinary team of professionals that support children and families in kind of the identification, adjudication of child abuse concerns. But Children's Center is the Child Advocacy Center, is particularly the place where children and families come when there is a concern of abuse and neglect, and we provide a comprehensive medical and forensic assessment to ascertain what happened to the child. We're neutral parties, and we interview the kiddo and try to identify what's happened in their case. We're a place where those other parts of the system come to the child. It's a very child-centered, trauma-informed space. Instead of, before child advocacy centers existed, kids might be interviewed like in the back of a police car, or at the hospital, or in a home where abuse might have happened. So this is really providing a neutral space to talk to kids, to identify what's happened to them. Those other professionals are invited to the center to hear directly from the child. So we're hopefully minimizing the number of times a child has to tell their story. We are nationally accredited, and there are organizations like ours pretty much covering the whole state of Oregon and really most of America. So Children's Center specifically, we provide well over 573 assessments last year. We also have a robust therapy program. We're very proud. We provide trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy to children who go through our program if our mode of therapy is the right fit. And we provided over 1,200 therapy sessions last year. And then again, our prevention program out in the community connects with adults, mostly in the community, to provide support and education about child abuse prevention and ways that adults can help keep kids safe. So again, we're here this month asking to share with different school districts some of the work that we do in prevention and ways we can kind of deepen our partnerships. So we've been working with a variety of school districts, kind of doing one-off trainings here and there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of work that we do, and have a great example of some work that we've done most recently with North Clackamas, where we really did some repeated trainings and worked very closely with their student and family services team over the course of the year, and really that kind of repeated engagement around topics related to child behavioral health and prevention, I think really has been of value. So I'll go ahead and dive into some of that. When we're talking about prevention, a lot of folks aren't maybe so familiar with what that means, but we take a very holistic approach. So we do tackle and can provide trainings on some really concrete child abuse topics, child sexual abuse. We have a curriculum that we've been providing for years called Stewards of Children that again trains adults about how to keep kids safe. We're actually getting ready to pilot a new curriculum in that regard. But we also do a variety of trainings that are more upstream, as I would say, like promoting resilience in kids, looking at ways to keep kids safe, talking to them about body boundaries, or really these are all adult-focused trainings, so talking to adults about how to keep those kids safe. So most recently in the last year with North Clackamas Schools, we again partnered with their family, student and family services staff, and we participated in 4 of their department meetings. We came to their regularly scheduled department meetings, and we did 2 separate 2-part meetings. One was on understanding and supporting students and families experiencing trauma, and talking about sort of how those trauma shows up behaviorally for kids, and sort of some strategies for how best to manage that. And then the second topic was around understanding and responding to youth sexual behavior, which is actually a very common concern in schools when between children there may be some inappropriate sexualized behavior. And it's something that really, when adults are prepared and have support in supporting those kids, redirecting them and setting clear boundaries, that it's actually a really effective way to support them. We participated in a variety of the district's resource fairs. They had a youth equity committee that we were really excited to participate in, and we went and we talked to them about self-regulation and grounding techniques. And they're really a group of, and I'm guessing you probably have similar youth committees of student leaders in their district, and so they're often folks who their peers turn to. So we were really excited to get to work with them. And then we did a couple of family-focused events. We often partner and show a movie called Screenagers, which has a couple of different versions, but that's about online safety and how parents and adults can help set boundaries, set healthy expectations and agreements within their household for how to manage online access. So some of the things we've learned from that partnership is really that continuity and longevity throughout the year seemed really beneficial. That staff knew us well. The level of participation from the first to the final training was really great. Those connections deepened and developed along the way, and that reaching those multiple audiences, the parents, the kids, and the staff, I think really was impactful in terms of everyone talking about the same sort of strategies around supporting kids and encouraging resilience through supportive actions. So I just heard you talk a little bit about non-instructional time, your training and all that. I know that that's a challenge, but again, I think we're here to really say that we'd love to talk about partnering. We can have a conversation with staff or follow up with the board if you're interested. I've shared a variety of topics that we do. We share more information about the Children's Center so that teachers and other school staff are familiar and able to refer to the center if it's needed. We do promoting resilience training, healthy boundaries and behaviors that I just talked about. and again, some online safety training and a variety of other topics that relate to abuse and neglect. So I'm sure I'm getting close to my time, but let me pause and see if you have any questions. And again, just appreciate your allowing me to come and raise awareness about the concern of abuse and neglect, and that it's really our responsibility as adults to protect kids. And schools are a big part of that. It's where our kids are every day. So thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks again.
Thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to move on in the public comment, which can we do it? All right.
I just wanted to thank you for coming up, because it's not easy to, it's easy for us to make comments about like, hey, these students did something great and it's amazing and we want to be a part of that. It's less easy to make comments acknowledging the fact that there is a body of work around how trauma informs children's behavior. And it's difficult to discuss, but I appreciate you coming and naming it and working through that. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to read the rules for public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please sign up on the comment sign-in sheet. So I do have the one that's related to board business. Is there anyone that did not get to sign this? Mr. McCabe, can I just write it down? Okay. The public comment time is a time for the board to use to collect information rather than engage in a dialogue. The board encourages speakers not to mistake the board's silence for a lack of interest or care. We are listening carefully and probably taking notes. If you are asking the district or board to respond or provide specific information, please provide your contact information with the district board secretary so that the appropriate person may follow up with you. The public comment time is not a forum for singling out individual district employees or students for complaints. If you have a complaint about an individual student or district employee, please do not mention them by name or provide information that would allow for them to be identified. Please use the district complaint process accessible on our website to help resolve individual situations of concern. The public comment time is for addressing the board and not the audience. All comments will be given their due respect by the board. Similarly, we ask that members in the audience be respectful of all speakers and refrain from giving cheers, claps, or negative noises such as booing when a member of our public is speaking or has concluded speaking. Please keep your comment time to 3 minutes. If 3 minutes is not enough time, you are welcome to reach out to the district office or board at a later time or submit materials to the board or district. All right. First up is Athena Contreras.
Hi, good evening. So I wanted to talk about the surveillance cameras that are included in the request for spending approval for today's agenda. I'm concerned about the cameras. I believe we have mostly pretty new cameras in our district. I don't know if they're going into new places or if they're going into replace because they are more modern technology. But I do have some concerns because I've been learning about the school security situation for a while. So I'm going to ask a few questions and see if we can kind of get some of this solved maybe, and request that maybe we could get a delay until the public has a little more time to talk about the capabilities of the cameras. So a lot of the Cisco Meraki cameras, I looked into this as quickly as I could given the time, and they do include machine learning for object detection, person tracking, and behavior analytics. I believe they have voice capabilities in some of the cameras. I want to know if there are any student biometric or behavioral data processed by these systems. If so, is that covered under the district's FERPA compulsory framework? And I want to know if there's any facial recognition, if that would be turned on, body shape, gait, location patterns, and these types of things that are very modern in modern surveillance. And do we have a district data governance policy that explicitly covers video-derived data? Has the district conducted a student data privacy impact assessment specific to this system? Is Cisco or any third-party vendors contractually prohibited from using footage or derived data for model training because they have to use the inputs from machine learning? And I don't know that our students should be inputs in machine learning necessarily. So I think it deserves discussion. And then, are the cameras placed in classrooms? I'm not sure. I would expect to see video or audio surveillance in the classrooms, but I want to be sure. Are they in any locker rooms, restrooms, counseling offices, or other areas where students have a reasonable expectation of privacy? The only reason I asked about that is because there's been cases in other districts, through the years. Who approves the new camera placements, and will we get to hear more about that in the future? So facial recognition, is it enabled or will it be available but not enabled? License plate recognition. I believe these same cameras are noted that on some of the specifications. Especially relevant for parking areas near schools. Behavior prediction, which is planning. And then also, if you cannot increase that total for the spending total without board approval, because we need to be able to see these things. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, Mr. McCabe.
John McCabe, Westland, Oregon. This only came to me when I looked it up, what was on the agenda for today. And Venture Properties had a DEQ violation in Wilsonville in 2022. And what you have before you is the ruling against them. And finally had to pay it for DEQ. They are the considered property purchasers. I mean, it has the exact same name, Venture Properties, Inc., and it's listed in the documents you have today. An item like this removes them from being considered. And I don't know if this is in your packet, and if it is not, it's something that needs to be looked at. This is not a minor issue, a $12,000 DEQ violation, which occurred in Wilsonville, Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to board business. The Department of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Barb Soyson.
Good evening. So we're very excited to bring forward a K-12 curriculum adoption. And as I think you know by now, having been with our curriculum adoption processes, when we adopt curriculum, it's about a whole lot more than adopting materials. And you're going to hear from that this evening. Also, we just, a comment was made about the core instruction and things that go beyond the core instruction and how important that is. And science, when we look at our students in ISEF and We want to notice this year the students who are represented in our ISEF middle level and high school and what they are doing. When we look at our robotics and look at the link, science has changed since we looked at the scientific method steps when we were in school. And you're going to hear a little bit of that this evening as well, speaking to that. Outdoor school, that I could go on and on about the links to science curriculum in our district. So we'll start by, next slide, introducing ourselves. And
I'm Jennifer Adams. I teach at Wilsonville High School. I teach biology, anatomy, and medical terminology.
My name's Lauren Butcher. I'm the instructional coordinator at Lowry Primary School.
I'm Steve Davala. I'm an 8th grade science teacher. I also teach some creative writing. Gabe can't be with us.
Oh, sorry. I'm Julie Wren. I am a 6th grade science teacher and math teacher at Rosemont.
And I am Caitlin Wiggins, and I'm a 5th grade teacher at Stafford Primary.
And Gabe Nagler, who's a science teacher at West Linn High School, who teaches chemistry and physics and dual language. He just had to leave. So he was here, but, and he's here in spirit with us, and I'm sure that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. I think you are familiar with the steps in our, in following the state of Oregon's instructional materials adoption, and just want you to know that the approved, the materials you're going to hear recommended tonight are on the ODE approved list. We are not looking at independent adoptions. Also want to be very clear that the funding for this adoption is coming from the capital fund, not the general fund. So we were very clear about this because it's really important, and especially to our teachers, that when we look at funding curriculum, we're not looking at something that has to do with the funding of programs or teachers. Next slide. Also, some of the things you're going to hear this evening about the scope and scale of this adoption. We have recently done literacy and math, and they were very large, comprehensive adoptions, both in terms of all of the components that come with the materials and in terms of the cost. And do know that science is a little different. Yes, we are looking at programs with full components, and also, though, we are looking at supporting literacy and lab materials. So when you see the word equipment, that's much more part of a science adoption. But please also know that these equipment requests that are figured into the capital bond expenditures are things that we're not starting over and saying, let's just go and equip brand new science labs, but we are looking at what is the state of the art, high tech for the courses that are being offered that are needed. And that also has to do with the technology. So equipment has to do with lab materials, consumable materials, kits of materials, and also the technology. Next slide. Not going to go through all this. This has been outlined, but one of the things to really emphasize in West Linn-Wilsonville is we start with a self-selecting group of teachers and specialists representing all of our schools. Also, we did not just meet as one huge K-12 group. These sessions were held by K-5, by middle level, and by high school level. And we go through not only looking at standards, looking at data, but really looking at what are the instructional practices that are recommended. And we look at that as a national level, and then we do a matching process. Next slide. Between the times when we have sessions, the teachers and specialists and instructional coordinator involved go back to their schools, and it's an iterative process. This is what we're looking at so far. This is what we found. What do you think? We use the criteria and ratings from ODE and establish priorities. And we also, this team that
these folks are representatives of, takes the lead then in the implementation that takes place over the next 2 school years. Next slide.
And when we think about a curriculum adoption, of course, you think about the curriculum itself and how it can change from the last time we adopted materials to now. We've seen that both with math and with literacy at primary. And the great thing about being on an adoption team is that you get like-minded individuals excited about, in this case, science, to come together at the elementary level, the middle level, and the high level to not only look at the curriculum, but to look at other aspects that drive student outcomes forward. Instructional practices, where are we with those when we think about teaching science? And then assessment. How do we know that kids are not only learning the information, but then are able to apply it starting in kindergarten and then ending their student career time with us in 12th grade and thinking about career readiness in the future. And then, of course, I can strongly speak for all of our teams coming together and just thinking about our students in the now and what that means as far as access and support for each and every kiddo in our district. Next slide. So at the primary level, these were kind of our 2 driving foundational questions that we were asking ourselves. We've just gone through 2 big adoptions, one in reading, one in math. And while we are super stoked about having a new science curriculum to dive into, we also wanted to be really thoughtful that our primary educators are on overload of intaking new curriculum. So we were really thoughtful about looking at ways we could build upon our current math program, our current literacy program, and then weave some science instruction into that. We noticed right away that there are clear nonfiction units in HMH that would easily tie into science standards. We also noticed that Reveal, especially in our data units, would be great extensions to math learning when talking about science. At the same time, we talk a little bit about balance throughout the evening tonight, wanting science to also stay science. And Dr. Shoemaker, when you talked about giving student opportunity, in elementary, I see science as being an equalizer. And I think that came up in our primary conversations a lot of students can be readers, students can take the stage as mathematicians, but they also can take the stage as scientists. And if a student is struggling with reading or with math because of literacy components, we often see them shine when they get to explore in more hands-on ways that science curriculum can provide. And so I think the primary team especially was really careful when we were looking at materials to build upon what we have, given the heavy 2 adoptions that we've been through, but also really passionate and excited to bring this opportunity in the way of introducing a great science curriculum.
Yep. So next slide, please. Okay, so the mid-level question. So in science and mid-level, it used to be that each year we would do like earth science in 6th grade, life science in 7th grade, and physical science in 8th grade. And that's not the way it is anymore with the NGSS standards that came in like 2014. Each year we do a mixture of those. And so it's really important to us because we spent time over the summer and working with each other at our 4 middle schools to, build curriculum maps. And so we wanted to make sure that when we adopt a new curriculum, that what we get fits within our framework that we already have. And so that can lead through to for the students to be able to do well as they move into high school also.
When we were looking at what we're doing for the high school and some of our questions, oh, sorry, next slide. Thank you. We have over 30 science courses offered amongst our 3 high schools. But our core classes are biology, chemistry, and physics. And one of the things we wanted to look at is how can we be doing similar things across the 3 high schools so that Westland students and Wilsonville students and Riverside students are having something similar if they're all taking biology. We also wanted to kind of keep in mind some of our students will transfer between the high schools during one school year to the next or even mid-year, and having similar curriculum amongst the 3 high schools will be helpful. So there was a lot of conversation around that. When we talk about how we all came together, we did start with pretty much all of the science teachers from all 3 high schools talking about what are our priorities, how do we want to kind of guide this. And as we're thinking about curriculum adoption, we want to make sure that we are serving our students who are interested in science. And we see a lot of interest in science. We see that with students participating in ISEF or signing up for an ISEF class where they can further their skills in research and designing experiments. We see a lot of students taking AP science classes and are thinking about careers in the STEM fields. So we wanted to think about how we can support that with our curriculum choices. Okay, next slide. Gabe is a little bit more of an expert here, but I will do my best to speak for him. At both Westland and Wilsonville, we have dual language courses in biology and chemistry. Both of those courses are part of the Spanish dual program. And so those classes are taught in Spanish. So as part of our curriculum adoption process, we wanted to look for materials that could be used in the English speaking classes and in the dual classes so that we can allow students who are in those dual programs to have a similar experience to the students who are not in the dual programs. Okay, next slide.
So those were some things for all the different levels. Here we want to think about some categories that we all can focus on. So one of the main things that the middle level really enjoys is having a phenomenon that everyone can kind of latch on to, and then kind of teach your units out from that. I don't know who's next. I can't remember.
Yep, I got it. The next one that's been a big focus across all content is universal design for learning, and that's really thinking about all students being able to access tools that are necessary for some are often really beneficial for all. So picking a curriculum that where that was a main priority was important. And then also vocabulary being explicitly taught. Teaching children of all ages how to understand, how to apply, how to use specific science vocabulary is important. And also vocabulary that we see crossover in different content areas. As well as thinking about our multilingual learners and making sure that vocabulary is robust in whichever curriculum we chose.
Yes, and then another real big consideration is 3D learning, because science needs to be hands-on. I mean, how can you have science without it being hands-on? And so learning those disciplinary ideas using the scientific and engineering processes.
Next slide, please. So another part of this is that science units really need to follow a storyline. So for example, before I taught 5th grade, I was teaching 3rd grade for a number of years, and there's a huge unit on salmon, and it starts with the phenomena of, if a salmon lays up to 4,000 eggs, why do only 2 survive? And so students are just really looking at that through that story lens from the perspective of a salmon and carrying that throughout the whole unit. And it's just very engaging.
Another important component of our science curriculum is having students talk to each other. A huge part of science in general is collaboration with other scientists. The things that we learn, it's, I learn a little bit and then the next person learns a little bit, and then that's how we've obtained our body of knowledge in the sciences. So having students talk to each other is an important thing. In my biology class, we often will pose a question, and students have a few minutes to think on their own and write down their question, and then they're sharing with the people that they sit next to, and then they will share with the class. And because 9th graders do not like to speak, I have dice, that will tell us who gets to speak based on where you sit. They do not really like that. And then we also, along that lines, that's a way for students to let their thinking be made visible. We'll do things where you're sharing your ideas with the class. We also do gallery walks where kids will write down their ideas, or maybe they're drawing a model. We get up, we walk around, we look at other people's models or ideas to help us further our own ideas, because maybe my idea was halfway there and then I see someone else's idea and that sparks something else. So that is an important component of what we're doing in the classroom.
Okay. Yeah. So some students think they know everything. So I think that's important to know that knowing the right answer isn't the most important thing, but it's like the process of learning. How do we get to that point? So it's trying to get more evidence-based learning and then making sense of that learning as we go, because all knowledge is like a dot here, a dot there. And the big picture doesn't come together until you've made lots of connections over time through primary, middle, and through high school too. So pre-assessment, having them think where they are right now and how can we, change their ideas without making them feel like, oh, you're wrong. But it's a process. Like, yeah, okay, maybe misunderstood, but how do we start to understand a little bit better, and how can we feel okay with not knowing it and then learning how to learn it? Next slide. Ready? Yeah. All right. So we kind of took apart some of this. Julie talked about this on the last slide. Different things we're looking for. So more specifically in the NGSS, three-dimensional parts kind of interwoven. The science and engineering process, this is the kind of almost the scientific method, where it's just asking questions, developing, planning and carrying out investigations. Teaching is not just open up a textbook and read this thing and now you understand it, but the hands-on and the thought process. Using math, constructing explanations, but also arguments with each other. Discussions as opposed to arguments perhaps, but obtaining, evaluating, communicating information, and something we call claim evidence and reasoning, CER method, where they'll have a claim and then gather the evidence through the experiments or readings or whatnot, and then taking some reasoning statements.
Yes, and the NGSS has seven cross-cutting concepts that should flow through all of the units that the students are doing throughout all of their years in school, starting, with patterns, and this starts when they're really young, even kindergarten, looking at cause and effect, at scale, systems and energy and matter, structure and function, and stability and change. And so that should be in all of the lessons all of the units that they go through.
Yeah, and the interwoven kind of different standards that we have through all the different grade levels, not just like you said before, sixth grade does life science, but just a mixing in of all of them so they can get experience with them and see them from year to year and how they can grow. Next slide.
So another thing that teachers always look at is the data. And of course, the data that we have that comes to us is the Oregon Science Assessment. And one of the things that we are looking at is it's given in grade 5 at the end of 6 years of science, in grade 8, the next 3, and then in grade 11. And so when you look overall, we'll want to be the first ones to say that we don't think that those scores actually represent the progress our students are making. We're not making excuses for that, but it's having students bring together all that they have done in those years when different school districts in Oregon, first of all, teach these concepts at very different times in very different grade levels, because it isn't like you have grade level standards, but then you have units and you can cluster, and you're encouraged with the complexity of the NGSS to cluster standards. One of the things that we're also starting to look at as data is where do our students go with science? And one fact that we want to work backwards from is since the pandemic, we have a record, and maybe since before, but we weren't keeping track of, in high school, students are required to take 2 science credits. Our students take 3 to 4 science credits. So the going on, and the grades that they have in courses are a better reflection. But we do feel compelled to say, so what are we going to do about that? Because maybe Linn-Wilsonville scores are higher than the state scores, but we don't think we have a great measure. We are looking at, even with within the interim assessments, there are some specific assessments, the Smarter Balanced interim assessments, where we could take pieces of them and get measures by grade level. And that's something that we are interested in. It also drove our teachers to look at programs that had very robust curriculum assessments within them. And again, because it's from this 3 dimensions of the problem solving as well as the content, it's those kinds of things that students need to be able to do. So what we're getting at is we're looking at, yes, we can improve that overall score, but we are going to be working backwards with this adoption, with having the resources to look at within the curriculum, with looking at interim assessments. How can we actually look at progress students are making and go from there? Lastly, there's great interest in what you'd call performance task assessments and the curriculum things that they have within the curriculums that are selected that look more at that, where they have to bring those things across those 3 parts of the NGSS together. And that's really the ideal, because then the instruction daily becomes part of the assessment. So we just want to bring this forward, that we feel compelled to say that, yes, we're not satisfied with this. And yes, through this adoption process and our plans with where to go next is how we'll address that. Next slide.
So we have, you know, our standards that really guide us. And in the adoption process, it gave us an opportunity to say, okay, where are we doing well? And of course, where do we want to go, and where can we find room from improvement? And at grades K-5, I think really unanimously, it was this feeling of their strength and alignment, and wanting to make sure that as far as science standards and how we're combining them and breaking them apart, we want to be really aligned so that all of our kids in all of our primary schools are experiencing science with some fidelity, and really working to strengthen inquiry, starting in kindergarten and moving through 5th grade.
And then we did the same sort of review when we got together at first as mid-level, and we had representatives from 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we looked at the areas that we felt that in each of those different years we needed to maybe strengthen. And then overall, we really wanted something that we could do that would increase local buy-in by the kids. So if we could do some more local and environmental content, hopefully that's going to interest the students. And then increasing the science reading and writing is so important. And then having a curriculum that allows us to do some data analysis and or data collection and then analyze that data was really important.
We looked at things that are listed there. One of the things that keeps coming up across all of the grade sections is science literacy, reading and writing in science. There's a lot of students who are not big fans of reading, and that's just fiction. And as a big reader myself, that makes me sad. But the skill to read nonfiction, particularly to read science texts where they're talking about research, it's a skill that students need. And working with them to develop that skill sometimes is like pulling teeth, but it's an important skill for students to have. Both as a student and then as a member of society. Can you read an article and kind of understand what the article is trying to tell you, especially if there are graphs and figures as part of it? So that is something that we are continually looking to build that skill in our students.
Next slide, please. So at the primary level, when we first came together as an adoption team, we came up with a whole list of priorities that we wanted to look at. And a lot of it came down to student engagement. And we talked a lot about what that means. Like, what does it mean for a student to be engaged? And one of the first things that we pretty much all agreed on was that we wanted a curriculum that wasn't fully based around a textbook. Because as Jennifer was just saying, we want to build an excitement for science from, kindergarten on up. And I think that students will be so much more successful if we have a curriculum that gets them really, really excited about science early on. So we looked at things that didn't necessarily have a textbook or only a textbook. We looked for things that had, really high quality visuals. So not only, video components, but really well done video components. We were looking at, things that, so when we were talking about engagement, a lot of it came down to hands-on. So not that science has to be a hands-on experiment every day, but that those components are there in the curriculum, and that it's not, again, it ties into literacy and writing, but it's not only reading and writing about science. It's actually doing the science and talking about it. Yes. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, something that came up too was teachers wanting something that kept the excitement going. And a piece of that is, yes, high quality materials, but also easy to use materials. So we would, when looking at curriculums, really, we wanted to say, okay, if I was a new teacher, if I'm, a third grade teacher that's moving to 5th grade, or a 4th grade teacher moving to kindergarten, how can I open up my curriculum and be excited about the science, and then teach my students about the science so that they can learn and do the science. So all of those factors went into primary, as well as, being available in Spanish. We have 2 Spanish dual schools, so it was important, and definitely an extra excitement to be able to give our teachers, who are also native Spanish speakers, the opportunity to read curriculum materials in perhaps their native language. Next slide.
Yeah, one of the things in middle school, and one of the things, we got together, and these are the main ideas we wanted to hit upon. Getting hands-on activities, getting the kids engaged is one of the big things. Trying to impress a middle schooler with science is kind of tough. So getting some interesting ones, hands-on activities are great.
And of course, incorporating the math and data analysis is so important.
Reading is one of the main focuses that we had, but being able to reach the kids where they are. So are we able to change the Lexile level is super important.
And along with that, the availability in Spanish and other languages for students who are not native English readers, to give them a place to be able to get a foothold.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Getting kids off of computers is one of the things we really wanted to do. I think we've gotten too used to, hey, getting on the computer, do this video, read this thing, or whatever. So just getting them off there to, get more opportunities for writing and talking with each other.
And universal design, so that, again, that every student has the ability to make an inroads with the curriculum is really important to us as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things geologically happening here in the Pacific Northwest. So trying to get some alignment with that. Do we hit any local phenomena or real world incidences that we can focus on in Oregon? Gets kids interested because of where they live.
Yes, and the projects and assessments designed for rigorous applications so that they can be practicing what real scientists do, and then also preparing them for their years as high school students and more in-depth study.
And then finally, getting the process, the CER process, developing their scientific thinking. I have an idea. Well, how do I support that with experiments or videos or readings or discussions or whatever? And then being able to communicate that to someone else. Next slide.
One comment before we go into high school. These priorities look great. What happened in the K-5 group and the 6-8 group is we had to stop back up, because what we found when we started looking and when we started interviewing publishers was, how do you have hands-on that's actually not just activity, but has some rigor and depth? And did a program have both of those things? How do you say, we don't want students on Chromebooks all the time, but yet you've got some real world data collection and analysis, which is technologically driven. So we had, at both levels, they weren't all the same, but we created and set up these priorities that were conflicting to a degree that it really made the process more complex.
For high school, we were looking at priorities, again, to support 30 plus classes across our different high schools. So this is a piece of this. We definitely wanted things to continue skills that are being built in 6 through 8. We use the claim evidence reasoning a lot. And in biology, we throw a wrench at the students where we give them a claim and they either have to support it or refute it, because so often in science, you think a thing will happen, and that is exactly what does not happen. And so you have to be able to say, yes, our evidence supports this claim, or the evidence does not support this claim. And so that's part of that familiarity of the science and engineering practice. What does it look like to do the science? Some of the things that we're looking at, we're analyzing data from the scientists in the middle of their studies. So having that real actual data that scientists are using, I find it far more exciting than the 9th graders do. And then being able to take their research descriptions and then presenting it in a way that high school students can easily understand. That is also part of this. And then we at Wilsonville have a large number of students who have Spanish as their primary language instead of English. And these are not students in our dual classes. So we want to make sure that we can have materials in Spanish to help support their learning.
Next slide, please. So where do we start? In being scientists, we had a huge list of ODE approved materials and set it in front of us, and then we just go through it, assigning, let's take a look. We just dug in and we had all our criteria for what we were looking for, and then just kind of dug in and started to say, hey, this meets our criteria, or this one doesn't, and then went a little further in. Next slide.
So at the primary level, we initially narrowed down the choices to the list of 5 on the left. And then after getting some sample materials and getting login access to look at the materials online a little bit more in depth, we narrowed it down to the 3 on the right, Twig, Discovery, and STEM scopes. And after reviewing all of that, we were really interested in all 3 of those, but it was really valuable to have representatives from all 3 of those come out and talk to us. And we asked them to do a sample lesson, the same sample lesson from 3rd grade, thinking that that would be a good middle of the road lesson, grade level wise, and to teach a 20-minute lesson, because one thing that has come up in primary is that science is not given nearly enough time in our day, and that a lot of people, because of the math and the literacy and all of the other requirements in our day, we really only have 20 to 30 minutes to teach science, which, if you think about it, is not enough. So we really need to get the most out of those 20 to 30 minutes. We wanted to see what a short, concise lesson would look like from each of these publishers. And after they did those lessons, we were well, I'll get into that later, but we were really, really impressed with one of them in particular. And next slide, please.
Yeah, and that was really discovery education and the science tech book. And this was just a blurb from kind of the rubric that we used when each publisher came and presented. And things that we really thought stood out from discovery were not only the option for kind of differentiated pacing throughout the year, but the depth that we could truly go in, not just the breadth of science topics, but really being able to go deeper with students was impressive. The platform seemed very user-friendly. There were materials for teachers to review to build their background knowledge, which we really appreciated. The opportunities for student discussion was impressive. And really the hands-on activities seemed engaging, seemed fun. When we did them together as adult learners, we were like, okay, we have a great base. And if every student in our primary schools were able to experience this space, we would feel really good. And then teachers could take it wherever they'd want after that. So that's where we landed as a primary school team. And also they have an inclusion of mystery science phenomenon videos. If you haven't looked up Mystery Doug, he kind of received his claim to fame during COVID. But man has created some really, really engaging, spot on science videos that kids love. And those are included and woven into some of the discovery education. So it'll feel familiar. Next slide.
So we went through a similar process at the mid-level, looked at our initial 5 programs of interest, and some of them were we crossed off our list because they were 100% online, and that definitely was not something that we wanted. There were some where they were very focused, like 37 days on kelp. And it was just like, that is just too much. The kids are not going to stay engaged looking at kelp for 37 days. And so we asked 2 programs to come in and give a lesson, and those were Twig Science and STEM Scopes.
Next slide. And they came in and taught us a lesson. They won my heart in the first second because there were graham crackers and frosting that was set out to do plate tectonics. And so food always gets you. And hands-on, so just from the get-go, and the lady was really into it. And I took a bunch of notes. I was really happy with the multi-level reading, hands-on, the videos that went along with stuff. There was not necessarily Pacific Northwest-based phenomena, but it wasn't too far off, and that's what teachers do best anyway. We can adapt to it as well, so it wasn't too far off, and it was the same material. It was easy to translate to. They had a strong Spanish program, but easy to translate to any language. They said a lot of. I mean, everything had CER embedded in. It was so CER focused for every lesson. It was like, well, make a claim about this. What do you think? Well, what's your evidence? Okay, now can you actually explain that to me, not just guess. Let's see, planning. There was a lot of planning material that made it easy for you to multi-level, get your high flyers, and just to hit all the different learners in your classroom. Multi-level assessments were all there. A lot of supports, and not just like here's a CER lesson, but how to. There are a lot of teacher supports, a lot of good, what they call their STEM coach. What were some other things that I saw? Sorry, I was excited about it. We were looking for hands-on simulations because we use a lot of those. And what do you use? They used some things that we do already. They use a lot of PhET. They've purchased some PhET things and used their own special programs with it. A lot of mathematical graphing with a thing called Tuva. Just getting the kids with numbers, making a graph, looking at it, predicting things. So that one is what we pretty much felt was our big choice.
At high school, in addition to looking at biology, chemistry, and physics, we had all these other classes to look at. It started in our meeting. We looked at the ODE list, and then some of us started looking at those books. Some of us were familiar with previous editions of particularly the Miller and Levine for biology. And then some of us just started typing in and seeing what we could find out there on, with Dr. Google. And we picked these 3 different books because we thought it would provide a good solid base at all of the high schools, but also allows for some freedom amongst the teachers to bring in our different experiences and our backgrounds and our teaching preferences and styles. And again, still have that same big background. And all of these three groupings have textbooks, and then they have online teacher materials that we can use for that. And they're available in English and Spanish, which supports both our dual classes and our students who have Spanish as their primary language. And the other thing that we're looking at for when we're thinking about science, especially at the high school, is practical things. So our adoption things include subscriptions. And so one of the things we need subscriptions for is Vernier, and that's a technology-based, it's a company that does science, technology stuff, and they're based in Oregon. And so they have these, and this is for physics, and you hook them up to your computer, and then you can, when you have it set up correctly, this one will do. You can make the little cars go, and then the physics teachers can use these to, you can use the computer interface to get data around velocity, around acceleration, and some other cool things. Physics is not my background, so that was what Gabe was going to talk about, and then he left me. And then we also use Vernier in our chemistry classrooms. This is an example of spectrophotometry. So we can use light as it goes through a sample to measure for concentration. This can be used to see how much of a substance is in thing as a way to analyze quantitatively, excuse me. And then other things that we want to have in science are things where kids can use practical tools to learn. These are from my anatomy class. And then making sure we have appropriate visuals to help students understand what it is we're talking about. This is to talk about red blood cells. Again, these were in my anatomy classroom. So when we're talking about subscriptions and replacing technology, that would apply to the Vernier things. Those are part of our subscription. Some of our other subscriptions are online simulations. And what I have for that? Oh, sorry, next slide. As I mentioned, these are some of the 30+ classes we have. We focused our efforts not on the AP classes. AP has their own set of required texts to use. So we were looking at things like marine biology, oceanography, anatomy. What do we need in textbooks that will help us both provide a good foundation and then allow some different leeway for teachers to bring their own experiences or do interesting things as it relates to science. And because it happened today, and I think it's super cool, our marine biology teacher took a field trip to the aquarium out on the coast, and then they went and looked at tide pools. And so the kids who went today were super excited about what they saw, and really, I think, just sparked another interest in science and learning cool things about the world around us.
Next slide. So in checking with the community for parent caregiver input, we had an in-person session, and then the presentation was sent through Parent View with an online form. We've had a very small response rate. We had 5 individuals at the in-person session, and then we've had a few responses, but the discussion, it was a healthy and helpful discussion for those who attended the in-person session. Again, we heard about balancing, limiting just online learning and use of Chromebooks. Really, the word inquiry got used a lot. Science reading and science writing, developing those skills as appropriate, not just having kids read and write, but looking at what are the actual writing skills, how do you actually, with vocabulary, how do you read research? And a side note, when we talk about subscriptions, we're also talking about in middle and high school research publications, age-appropriate ones for middle and high school students. And we're talking about book box materials, things that are nonfiction science reading to fit within as we continue to add to the HMH literacy book. So that's part of the subscription piece too. We did hear, and there was some talk about high school students, especially about having text available, and whether it's online PDF or whether you actually have a book, but mainly as a reference source for when students are at home was something that was talked about. And again, the one query that we got on the online form was, are you going to make sure that you provide the materials and the equipment that go with whatever you adopt? Next slide. So this sums it up. One of the things, again, the discovery education with having some, again, that balance, STEM scopes with the equipment and subscriptions. And as I think was said at the beginning, it really is good to know that our high schools are aligned in the 3 core science classes by the text they're using. That really helps with curriculum mapping. And in addition to helping with students who might be moving between schools or anything like that, we're talking a lot about co-planning and co-teaching. And the more that you have aligned yourselves with looking at how are we all working with the same ideas, it's a way that an adoption process can help with that. So with that said, we can either, I think maybe make a motion and then have questions for the panel.
I'm going to make a motion.
I move to adopt Discovery Education for primary science, STEM scopes for middle school science, Miller and Levine for high school biology, Inspire Chemistry and Supplementary Text Foundations of College Chemistry for high school chemistry, and Experience Physics for high school physics as presented.
Is there a second? All right. There's a motion and a second to adopt Discovery Education for primary science, STEM scopes for middle school science, Miller and Levine for high school biology, Inspire Chemistry and Supplementary Text Foundations of College Chemistry for high school chemistry, and Experience Physics for high school physics as presented. Is there any discussion or questions? Director Salvaggio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I think this is great. Thank you for the presentation. In going over the materials beforehand, I've just been really impressed at the foundational use of next generation science standards, the focus on inquiry and experimentation, and the cross-disciplinary focus with math and reading. It strikes me as the type of integrated learning program that we should be striving for, not just in sciences, but everywhere else. And so thank you for putting together what I'm just going to say is a curriculum that I'm very, very proud to be able to vote yes on. I just want to say there's a quote that has been misattributed to several people, but it is the difference between screwing around and science is writing stuff down. And I can tell you as a father of 2 toddlers that they do a lot of unwritten down science. I know what the effect of, juice on the kitchen table is, and surprise. But it has really imparted on me the understanding that children are tiny scientists, and as they explore their world, and I can kind of see the beginnings of this experimental rigor that is not quite written down. It really makes me happy that as they go through school in Linn-Wilsonville, that natural propensity to do that will be harnessed and lead them into this curriculum and then so much more. So thank you very much.
Dr. Shoemaker?
nobody loves it when I say back when I was a teacher, but back when I was a teacher, when I was involved in this kind of process, I swear it was a line. And it's so refreshing to hear you talk about student learning and your focus on student learning. The words I'm hearing from you are collaboration, discourse, inquiry, observation, universal design, thinking, integration, questioning, strategies, all the things that I'm proud that we're talking about in education. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your focus.
And the other word that I heard was excitement from all of you. And we often have the ISEP kids come in and they share their work and it's like incredibly impressive. But the underlying characteristics that they bring is that they're really curious and they're really confident. And that comes from having a strong base and being excited about science. And I heard that from all of you. And at first, when I saw Mrs. Wren, I was like, well, I'll just do whatever she tells me because she's the best science teacher. But this presentation has confirmed that you all feel really confident in this and you're really excited about it and what it'll do for our students. So I just want to thank you for your time on this committee, and I'll be supporting this motion.
So I just wanted to say that I was just very impressed with the mindful, thoughtful thinking of just the alignment, making sure that it allows access to all student learners, whether they're English language learners, neurodivergent, anybody on an IEP. So I thank you for that. The one question that I have, and I'm sure the answer is very simple and it's probably a yes, but with these different curriculums for primary, how does that build for the middle? Like, do they all build on each other? And is it a smooth transition as they're going from primary to middle and then middle to high school? Like, are those foundations in place where they all align, I guess?
It comes back to aligning to the NGSS standards. So if you look at the NGSS standards, and if you want to do that, I recommend going to the ODE website to look at them because it's a lot easier to navigate than the NGSS website, just FYI. But there are different standards at each level or each grade level. And if they're being met at that K through 5, then they have the foundation they need at 6 through 8. They're being met at 6 through 8, then they have the foundation they need at high school. And so we see it every year in bio. It's like, oh, we're talking about this. How many of you remember this from middle school? Oh, I remember. Or you're like, hey, let's talk about the mitochondria. What is that? It's the powerhouse of the cell. And they have those foundational pieces that they got in their previous years. Does that answer your question?
There's another factor to that, and I'm just reminding you, you all talked about that in every group. They talked about skills a lot, and you referenced that earlier when you talked about claim, evidence, reasoning. Those words are actually formally used in 3rd grade. And so that creates a through line. Can I say that I saw this happen in the Mystery Science video? Because what's my evidence? How do I need to rework my story of why it happened as I get more information so I can explain it? And that becomes more sophisticated. It was really good for me to hear the table with the K2 teachers talking about that. As a matter of fact, one curriculum program was not selected because there wasn't enough there to have the depth for the evidence part to develop the reasoning, even though there were lots of fun things to do. But I think that that's another piece with, the skills and the thinking and the observation skills that the teachers talked a lot about what that looks like. Even with using science vocabulary, with discourse, I think that complements what Jennifer was just talking about.
A few years back when we had a meeting with middle school teachers and high school teachers, and we don't often have that. And it was really refreshing to hear, hey, here's what we're doing, and just having that communication. And I feel it's been a while since we've done that, and I don't think we've ever sat down with primary to see, well, how are we transitioning from here to here? I think that'd be really nice to know. So it's hard to tell what's going on from one level to the next, but I'd like to see that again.
So as my background actually is in chemistry. I have a master's degree in chemistry, and I worked in the field for a long time. And for me, if I can impart in my 6th grade students how to think like a scientist, how to look at the world as a scientist, all of them are young scientists. And so I think, that's really the most important thing. The content that I teach them may stay with them or not stay with them, but teaching them claim evidence reasoning and how to think as a scientist, I think, is really the most important through line that we can give the kids.
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate just all the time and effort that all of you put into this. And also being, for K through 5, just being mindful of the teachers with the recent adoptions that we've had, that this just kind of just smoothly works into it with what they have in the current new math and literacy. So I appreciate that. And I love the example about the nonfiction part. So I think, anybody else have any discussion? All right, Kelly Douglas, take vote.
Thank you, Director Wyatt, Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Dr. Ludwig.
Well, now that you got your yes, yay. I just want to thank you on behalf of the district of the extraordinary amount of time that your committee spent. There'd be times when I would be leaving and you all were still in this room, and stories from Barb about how thorough and how thoughtful and how invested you were as a group on behalf of all of your colleagues and the students. I'm excited for them. Lucky kids, lucky teachers as we delve into this. Thank you for really thinking about those considerations in a way of connecting to other content areas. I always felt, maybe I'll use the same phrase when I was a teacher, I always felt that science pulled it all together. That's where the reading, the writing, the math, the analytical thinking all starts to make sense around something pretty phenomenal or curious for kids. And I hope we get more time in science than the 20 minutes, because I think there's ways of doing some really rigorous reading, writing, and math through the application of science. So thank you for generating that idea about hands-on and entry points for students. I'm really excited for our kids. Thank you for approving this adoption, and to our community for approving the bond, which allows us now to fund a really phenomenal program that's just going to be great for our students. So again, thank you all. And thank you for coming tonight after a long day of teaching, sitting through a lot of other aspects of the meeting until you got your turn. So really appreciate all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next up is the business office, Dr. Hughes.
Good evening, School Board. The business office has one item to present to you tonight. That is a request for the budget message and budget meeting calendar change for the fiscal year 26-27. So back in October, the board approved the budget calendar for the fiscal year 26-27. Under that schedule, the superintendent would deliver the budget message on May 4, and the committee would receive the proposed budget from us on the same day. The budget committee will have 2 weeks to review the proposed budget and send us a question. And then meet again in May 18 to discuss about the responses, follow up ask follow-up question, and then the school board will, the budget committee will approve the budget on May 18, and then the board will finally adopt the budget on June 15. So this handout has 2 pages. The first page is the amending request budget for tonight, and the second page is the original budget calendar that the school board adopted on October 6th. As you know, over the past several weeks, the business office has been managing an unusual heavy workload, which includes a bond sale that requires a significant time and attention from our part. At the same time, the enterprise system program, which is a budget software that not only our school district use, but along our school district, we have other 15 school districts in Clackamas counties and also other counties utilize it, has been experiencing technical issue. And this challenging have made it difficult to work consistently with our budget data. Our IT team and Clackamas IT team jump in, working hard to support us, but the delay had been substantial and outside of our control. So because of this combined factor, we are worried that we may not be able to complete the document on the original timeline. And accuracy and completeness are essential. And we want to ensure that the budget committee receives the document that is reliable, comprehensive, and ready for a meaningful review. So for that reason, the business office is requesting an adjustment to our budget calendar. Specifically, we asked to move superintendent budget message from May 4 to May 18, which is already scheduled for the budget committee meeting. And then we would ask the budget committee to take action on the proposed budget on June 1st. Our goal is simply to be transparent about the challenges that we are facing and to request the time needed to deliver a budget that meets the district expectation for accuracy and quality. So with that, I'm asking if you could approve my request.
Move that we approve the request for the amendment to the budget calendar.
Second.
All right, it was moved and seconded that the board approve Dr. Hughes' amendment to the budget calendar. So the budget message would be delivered 5/18. First budget committee meeting would be 6/1, and then June 3rd is reserved if there's a second budget committee meeting needed. All right, do you want to take a vote? Are there any discussion, questions?
So would there be no meeting on May 4th?
You'll still have a regular school board
We'd
meeting.
have a regular board meeting
Yeah,
on May 4th.
yeah, it'll be shorter. And then just a reminder, you also have a special board meeting on the 13th to come back to your board goal number 5. So we'll have a few meetings in May.
Madam Chair, I was just hoping that the staff could put the proposed calendar changes into the public agenda for tonight's meeting. If we could put the proposed changes into the public record for tonight's meeting.
Yeah, if it's approved, then we'll get them out to the public and on the website right away.
Then I will, if it's approved, then I will send an email to the budget committee to inform everyone.
Any other questions? All right, Kelly Douglas, take a vote, please.
Thank you. Director Wyatt. Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your understanding and support.
Yeah, just want to note that this still, we're still on timeline then for the final adoption on June 15th. That doesn't change. So thank you.
Right, next is Department of Operations, Jeff Chambers.
So we're going to invite the whole team up. And we already had these tables. So what we'll do first is we'll just do the first item around Oppenlander, and then the other ones we're going to cluster together. and not have separate individual reports. You've got the memos, so we'll be able to expedite it a little quicker. But we've got the memo on Oppenlander, and so you can either open with a motion or you can right away
Madam Chair, can I just open with the motion? Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you.
I move to select the proposal from Venture Properties, Inc. and direct staff to negotiate a non-binding letter of intent and purchase and sale agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so there is a motion and a second to select the proposal from Venture Properties, Inc. and direct staff to negotiate a non-binding letter of intent and purchase and sale agreement. Any discussion or questions, Director Salvaggio?
And I just want to introduce that we do have Mr. Nick Diamond here, who was our realtor broker.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just had a few items that I wanted to ask the witnesses, staff. So we were treated earlier to the fact that there has been a DEQ penalty assessed in 2023 against Venture Properties. It appears, based on the address and all that, that it's the same Venture Properties as what we're talking about right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. And Venture Properties has been, it looks to me like, in existence for 35 years. It's good that we know this information. I'm glad that it's come to light. It should be incorporated into our decision-making process. But for the record, I don't think that that means that it's necessarily a singularly dispositive element. So I have a few questions. It appears that in 2022, Venture Properties attempted to take mitigating steps in order to correct the lack of best practices in sediment management. And the year after that, DEQ said, despite those mitigation attempts, we're still going to be fining you, and you have 20 days to contest that. I didn't see any contest in the record. Did Venture Properties contest that, or did they simply pay their fine?
We have been in communication with them on this topic. Venture Properties did not contest the fine. When they were notified of the issues originally that August, they promptly took all the actions necessary to address those shortcomings and provided all the documentation necessary by that November, as noted in that document. Their wording was that rather than get into an argument over any details of that they had a lot of development underway, and their focus was to ensure that they were always leading with those best practices in the first place moving forward. And I was not able to locate any evidence of subsequent DEQ violations by that firm.
All right. And just two more quick questions. And in not contesting that fine and paying it, I assume that they're still eligible to do business in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, fines of this sort are not something that would typically lead to that. It would take very significant and repeated fines before a CCB licensure might be revoked for things of this type. It's not a good thing, obviously, that something like this would occur. It does appear from the record and the information we received from them that they approached that situation responsively to do better. And so there's no indication that there's any issue with them operating in that capacity.
And then my last question, and there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't foresee or suspect that there's anything in their actions or the record that would in any way exempt them from any existing land use laws, regulations, or rules moving forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So my question on top of Director Salvaggio is that still the recommendation, like from Nick and as well as operations?
Staff's recommendation remains the same.
Thank you. All right. We're ready to take a vote. Kelly Douglas?
Thank you. Director Wyatt. Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond, for coming out. Sometimes the best success is something that's uneventful too. So we really appreciate it. We know your work isn't done. This just cues you up for the next stages. So thank you so much. The next 3 items for you, we've kind of grouped them together, and you have staff sitting in front of you. You have 3 resolutions in front of you, and very well crafted memos that you were able to read about each of the upcoming purchases that our staff is recommending. So we thought instead of just reading through each of them, we would allow you to start with any questions you have about any 3 of the proposals. And then at some point we'll need a motion and vote for each of them separately, but we'll just kind of cluster these as one conversation. They're often connected in many ways as well. So.
Any questions? Director Wyatt?
So with respect to turf fields, is this a vendor that we have used before?
It is a vendor that we have used before. They are a regional leader in this industry for the synthetic turf. And their parent company also includes another firm, Bain, which is able to do the track surfacing. And so as described in the memo, they are uniquely suited to attempting to accomplish that turf and track in the same summer.
So I'm talking about both the Wilsonville High School and Westland surfaces. So these are so heavily used by the community. Can you give us an idea of how long they'd be offline? Maybe when this starts and how long you think it goes?
Yeah, we're actually negotiating the exactness of that schedule at the moment. Considering potentially starting before the end of the school year, once spring sports have ended, in order to minimize the time on the back end. It could even go into September potentially, a short period. In conversations over the last year with athletic directors and principals of the schools, the preference was to make sure that we got both of these done at one time. As both the track and the turf at each school is very much at the end of that useful life. But we're hoping those negotiations in the next couple of weeks prove that we're able to pull that end date back into August and have it done before school.
Director Wyatt?
This is just a curiosity, but why is turf and track at one school more expensive than the other?
That's an excellent and reasonable question. Westland High School, the asphalt surface of the running track in a certain area has been impacted by tree roots. And so Mr. Chambers and his team have had to come back and do some cutting and patching of the track surface. And so as opposed to at Wilsonville, where the asphalt is generally in good condition, there's a small portion of the track that we're going to remove the asphalt and take care of those tree roots, put in some preventative measures, and then repave before putting the track back. So that's there's nuance, but that's the primary thing.
And then is there any latitude or opportunity for students at the 2 high schools to have input into colors, end zone, painting, any of that? Or is it just a standard package?
Generally speaking, the systems that we've got included in the quotes line up more or less with what's there. We have been in active conversation with the school leadership at each high school, and I think within reason, having, you know, I'm certainly open to the notion of having some conversation about, you know, we've contemplated a price for a certain amount of lettering and end zones. I think there's probably only so many options there, but I know that both high schools also have their latest logos for the center of the field and so forth.
Okay, and I just have one question on the IT. Is this, so it's replacement of everything that's reached end of life, like the Chromebooks, the printers, the cameras, video monitoring. So it's replacement instead of like new.
Yes, it depends on the project. So for example, if we're looking at the Chromebooks, you know, we try to do an annual replacement of around, it depends on the year, but between 10 to 20% of our fleet. And this helps take care of damages, and it makes sure that we have a regular refresh cycle so that they don't have one end date, and then we're stuck with having to replace potentially 10,000 Chromebooks at the same time. So depending on the project, we are trying to keep like our fleet just modern, current, secure, performant. The other example of the video monitoring replacement, as we approach the end of this calendar year, a large percentage of our video cameras will no longer receive firmware updates. So that is a security liability. And we have an opportunity to go out and see, is this a good time to do a full replacement versus just replacing a core part? And if you'd like, I can speak to you in detail the project that we begun last July up to until this point.
All right. Any other questions? Director Wyatt?
Technology purchases, this is just a comment that I appreciate the thoughtfulness in bundling this together and being very thoughtful in how that is scheduled and rolled out. It definitely seems like the most transparent and thoughtful way for us to think about technology expenditures in a time when, I mean, that pricing and that approach could vary so much year by year. So just thank you for pulling all of this together and having this on this agenda as well.
Director Shoemaker?
I just want to say that I've had many conversations with district employees over time around privacy concerns. And so if there's a comment that you would like to make around privacy, or Dr. Ludwig, I know that's been a conversation that I remember having since the late 90s. And obviously that conversation changes over time, but I welcome a few comments.
Yeah, I would really like to mention that our administrative rule for video surveillance, ECACAR, is very prescriptive in how our system is to be used. So if we look at some of the phrasing in here, it says, you know, video recordings will be stored for a maximum of 30 days. And there's very specific language of how staff will review footage. And there's also mention of live viewing should be considered atypical. So the purpose of this AR and how we proceed with using the system is really for investigations and not something that you proactively monitor. In terms of data privacy, the system that we're very interested in is, that's what they say, they're data privacy by design to start with. With consultation with Clackamas ESD, we've identified the system that they use themselves and have highly recommended. And they also said that many of our neighboring school districts are also using the system just because of the data privacy aspect. In fact, just last month, I spoke with director of IT at the Lake Oswego School District about how they have been using Meraki's system and if they've had any concerns, especially. And they have just been very positive on the system. Also, Estacada, Malala, Canby, Oregon Trails, they all use the same system. And one nice thing about this is Clackamas ESD has offered to help the districts using these systems to help them design, manage, implement. So they have full confidence in the system, and it's built with data privacy in mind. So for example, many of these video monitoring solutions offer biometric tracking or facial recognition, and natively this system does not support that. This is not to say that that's not possible. At the end of the day, it's just a video recording that you can feed into an AI system and for them to do that type of stuff, but that's not really something we're interested in. As we follow the administrative rule, it really is to use a system, and with this modern capabilities is to help us expedite investigations, and that's really it.
I think another important thing to add about the AR is it's really specific on who can access these cameras and view these cameras. There's a lot of thought that goes into how we use this monitoring system and who can use it.
Director Salvaggio?
I want to thank you for putting the package together. I'm probably going to vote yes, but I do have some questions and just want to put some stuff on record because I don't want to play the role of the board at the beginning of every post-apocalyptic sci-fi movie that's like, this technology is so safe because everyone's using it, obviously, and then it turns evil. So I typically trust big tech farther than their contract. And so I guess my question is, we have policy EACC, A, or whatever it is. Is that it? Well, that policy that you referenced. Is it written down somewhere that they have to treat the data in accordance with that policy?
I'm not sure what you mean by treating the data.
So my understanding is that Cisco Meraki cameras put footage up to a cloud that's managed securely by Cisco.
Okay.
So,
yep. So the video recording the footage, and granted, it does use AI specifically to detect persons and objects like cars, and it doesn't track any biometrics, but all of that footage and attributes are stored locally on the camera. They are not stored in the cloud. The Meraki portal, it's really, it's considered a service provider. So you just use it to do your investigation, and it's actually querying the cameras on our campus. So really nothing is stored in the cloud. Meraki does offer an extra cost for cloud archiving, but that's not something we're interested in, just because we don't have a need for it currently, given the 30-day maximum retention.
that makes me feel a lot better because, it's one thing to say we have a policy, but obviously we can't hold Cisco to our policies unless there's a contractual relationship. So thank you for clarifying that. I will sleep much better knowing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Kelly Douglas, please take a, I thought we were grouping them all together. Oh. Okay.
So I'll start with, I move to adopt resolution number 2025-09 for the Wilsonville High School track and turf replacement project.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2025-10. Whoops. 9. Sorry, guys. For the Wilsonville High School track and turf replacement project.
Thank
take a
you.
vote.
Director Wyatt.
Aye.
Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next one.
I move to adopt resolution number 2025-10 for the Westland High School track and turf replacement project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2025-10 for the Westland High School track and turf replacement project.
We have some quick discussion
Yes.
because it's not late enough for me. I'm just going to say quickly, and I would thematically apply this to all of these items as we're beginning to spend down the 2025 bond funds. And I know that the long-term planning committee and the the bond oversight committee have already been working on this and discussing this, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to go above and beyond in terms of our transparency. I recognize that we check all the boxes in terms of what's required to be put out there. I understand that we even go farther than that and put out information that's not required, but subject to, public records nonetheless. And we've got a lot of information online, but in looking at some of the other public transparency products that are out there and being used by other local governments, I'm a little jealous because some of them make it very, very easy for the public to engage at a very, very granular level. And the city of Corona, for example, has their check register online for their entire municipal budget. I'm not saying that we need to do that for the entire budget at this point in time, but as we are able to set up a reporting and transparency function for the bond with bond funds, I hope that we really stretch and rethink how we can not only get that information out there, but how we can get that out there in a way that's easy for the public to parse. And I would really be thrilled to work on that. That's all.
I'm wondering if Director Shoemaker, you want to speak to that. That topic came up at the last Long Range Planning Committee about really communicating the projects. It's a different kind of a bond that has, maybe the curiosity of each school around the projects for their schools.
Yeah, it did at the last Long Range Planning Committee just a week or so ago. And there are some good ideas among members about that very thinking. Really appreciated, they appreciated in leading up to this bond, the transparency around particular projects. And there was also that discussion of, are we lacking a little bit in the way that we report even those meetings? So I think I'll look forward to, and we'll look forward to working with you as well on how we can maximize that transparency.
If I may, just note that our team in construction office and operations and technology, as well as coordinating with Andrew Kilstrom, our communications director, we were already well into all of those conversations. As always, I appreciated the Long Range Planning Committee's thoughtful and challenging questions. That's the value of them being there. I'll say I wasn't surprised by it, and I don't think there's anything they were contemplating that we're already not digesting. This initial phase right after a bond passage is challenging because we're taking those 300 line items and packaging them to what will actually be bid and built. And it always takes, through till, getting close to that July meeting for that data to all get put together thoughtfully and correctly and enabled to actually do the program. And so just ask a little more continued patience, but we are actively pursuing this. And the goal is to continue to have that committee bringing very positive reports to the board about what we're doing and how we're being responsive to their questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready.
Thank you. Director Wyatt.
Aye.
Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
To adopt resolution number 2025-11 for the authorization of $2,625,000 of technology purchases in compliance with board policy DJ.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2025-11 for authorization of $2,625,000 of technology purchases in compliance with board policy DJ. Any further questions? Any further discussion? All right.
Thank you. Director Wyatt.
Aye.
Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And we are just, you can stay right, just in case you have
That's okay.
questions. Yeah. We've passed a large capital bond and there's going to be a lot of projects. And you've passed 3 resolutions tonight because of our policy that requires contracts to be approved by the board. And we anticipate more coming in the future, which got us really thinking as a team around policy DJ and that threshold of approving projects if they're $150,000 or more. That's a 10-year-old policy. We did do some research looking around at neighboring districts, and those that are larger and have more recently passed capital bonds and have much more activity going on have gone ahead with the recommendation of moving that threshold up to $250,000. And so while we're thinking about this tonight, we are going to ask the board if you'd be willing to make that amendment to the policy just to that number. We're not changing any other language at this time, but just changing the dollar figure in that district purchasing policy DJ, where it says not to exceed $150,000 to bumping that up to not to exceed $250,000. Similar to Beaverton has moved up that threshold, so has Sherwood. These are 2 districts that have also passed capital bonds. And so we'd be looking for that motion tonight. I don't have a sample motion in front of you, but it could be just as simple as I move to increase the dollar threshold in policy DJ, and then stating the amount. And we're available for any questions.
Is there a motion?
I move to increase the expenditure or payment threshold in policy DJ to $250,000.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to increase the threshold to $250,000 for policy DJ. Any discussion? Director Salvaggio?
I have a question for the superintendent. And what is the established process of informing the board and timeline once such a expense is made? So let's say the superintendent or designee says, you know what, $240,000 for solid gold sinks in the bathroom. We got to have that. At what point does the board know about that? Not that that would actually happen.
That the purchase was complete, or when we come to you for the permission?
What? Beg your pardon?
Are you talking about after it's been approved by the board, how you know that it's completed, or are you talking about the decision-making process and what to bring forward?
Well, my understanding is that it wouldn't be initially approved by the board.
So
correct?
you're talking about items now that are less than that?
Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
under the threshold.
Yeah, so that then becomes the ability for staff working with the business office to go ahead and just make those what we would now call smaller purchased items. It used to be that 150,000 was considered, a very large, significant, and with inflation, that has actually moved to not being as large and significant, just the cost, and rather than coming to the board with these smallish items. Tonight you did larger items, 2 million, 1 million, but you could be inundated with some very small contracts. And so the idea is to push it to that the board is approving larger ones and allowing staff just to manage more of those smaller routine contracts.
So, but sorry to clarify, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
I'm not anticipating the board would have to approve each of those, but at some point that would necessarily have to become known to the board and frankly the public. Where would we go to educate ourselves on what had been spent?
Yeah, well, I think we were talking about some more transparency around project completion with the bond. So if they're part of the bond, then as those get done, they would be shared with the bond oversight committee. Some of them may not be as overt, and maybe there's examples that staff can give if they're a component that's maybe not as visible, but they're kind of in the system, but maybe not as visible to the public. It's a back end kind of a product. But again, we do have projects outlined in the bond that as these smaller ones contribute to that, the public will get to know they're completed. Anyone want to add some details to that, maybe for construction as well as technology?
Yeah, there's a large volume of contracts that could fall in that range between $100,000 and $250,000. What we've seen over recent years is ORS being updated from often a threshold of around 100,000 to that $250,000. That generally applies to general purchase of goods and services as well as design type services versus the public improvements contracts, which that threshold for full public competition is still $100,000. But as Dr. Ludwig said, I think that threshold, scaling to the last couple decades of inflation, it's in line with what it was before. And in terms of how the board, the community, and the bond oversight committee would become aware of it, that's where that increased communication plan and additional financial reporting that we've been discussing. We don't have that set today as we've discussed, but that transparency would be coming through that process, that folks would be aware of what is coming. And these are the scope and scale of contracts where Oregon law does not require full competitive bid with full noticing. Generally, there varies by the class of procurement, but I think the sense from staff was that bringing alignment to that 250,000 kind of got that kind of semi-formal to the full public formal procurement. I don't know if that helped to answer your question.
Can I close that thought, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I appreciate that, and I will just say that the change makes perfect sense to me. I have some reservations given that this is not limited to just bond funds. And since I understand that the 250,000 is within the normal course of things in terms of inflation and state law, but when we look at the financial challenges that we just came through over the last few months, that's a significant chunk of change. If the district feels that this is necessary over the next month, I'm happy to offer a yes vote on this. I would like to then come back with some addendum next month that outlines specifically how such such purchases are listed, made transparent, etc. But I'm not going to block this tonight if the district needs it.
Maybe I can suggest most districts that we've been looking at with this policy, the policy looks almost identical district to district with that number changed. And then districts have an AR. And the specificity then of that implementation is outlined in the AR. So we can certainly work on an AR. Beaverton has quite an extensive one. So that provides some nimbleness to staff to kind of be thinking about, we've got this core policy now, how do we do that? So I think that would be the preference of staff, is as we work through, pending approval by the board, we can certainly begin to work on an AR and start with ones that are available that other districts have also navigated through with legal counsel. So
That sounds like a fine solution to me.
Okay. Director Shoemaker.
So do we have a sense from the last year how many purchases fell in that range between 150 and 250?
The nature of the state of the 2019 bond program is that we have not been launching new large contracts. There's been a lot of concluding. So unfortunately, the last year would be a poor example. I'm searching my memory banks at the moment, but there aren't many in the last 12 months by the nature of where we're at in the program.
And of course, this isn't limited to bond purchases, right? That's a large increase from 150 to 250, but it's been 10 years, so you would expect it to be a large increase. Can you name off the top of your head some items that are in that 150 to 250 range? I'm just having a little trouble.
Yeah, there could be minor renovation projects. There's a lot of scope in the new bond program, things like water boilers and things like that could fall into that range, where you need to hire an engineer, do a design, and then replace what at home we'd call a water heater, but in a 250,000 square foot building is something else altogether. Something like that could certainly be in that range. Again, it's something where the projects that we're going to be doing under the bond are things that have been specifically called out in advance. And the goal of the process of the next few months in how we're going to be, bringing that information forward to the community is to be able to show, like, here's the water heater replacements at Westland High School, and here's what it cost.
So tonight we were approving large things, right? And in the past, we've approved curriculum adoptions, and again, those are big purchase things. I don't remember in the last 3 years of being inundated with lots of requests for purchases that, I don't know, sort of bog us down.
Yeah, I think the nature of this program is quite different in that it's the whole 190 million. There aren't, like, the contracts we did tonight are, not the largest projects that'll come forward, but they are real dollars. There will be far more smaller contracts in this next program. And again, with all the other logic already discussed tonight, we thought, given that, it could be of use.
yeah, so I think the shift in this was not so much that what's that difference between 150 to 250. It's just inflation over time, over the last 10 years, that Oregon contracting group said, let's just do the 0 to 250. Let's just keep, and I anticipate we do over time that threshold will continue to move. So it's not really about what was in that gap that we missed. It's about this whole movement now from up to 250,000 being one where they feel comfortable that with municipalities, school boards, other government agencies making those kinds of approvals without coming to an authorizing board. And so we felt with this type of bond, as Mr. Douglas mentioned, there could be the potential for more before the board than maybe we feel we need to.
Well, I would agree with a bond that is more stewardship focused, right? The potential for more projects, probably grossly more projects, and more that might fall in a sweet spot there price. But, you know, as you can imagine, there's a balance here, right? There's a reason why the rule exists at all, and that it's got a number, that it ever existed. So I'm just thinking.
So I have a question though, it says products, materials, supplies, capital outlay, and services that are not within current budget appropriations. So are we talking things outside of our operating budget and more just toward capital bond expenditures?
Yes, and we've had this conversation with our attorney recently, as well as we did contact our auditors to just say, you know, here we are, we've passed this bond, we have this policy DJ. How does it come alongside the board authorization of the whole bond? But then we also have these individual projects, and we do have to kind of work with both. We've authorized this whole bond, but you also are looking at contracts that are smaller authorizations. And so I think a good rule of thumb is to think if there's an appropriation towards something, you've given that authorization. So when you passed the 25-26 budget, we hadn't passed the bond. And so we're now making some purchases that are outside the scope of the budget, but by law, we are allowed to start spending the bond within that same fiscal year, even though it's not appropriated in the budget. We can now do some appropriations in this upcoming budget because we know we've got the bond. We can start to put that, recognize that, put that into our budget, and anticipate some of those appropriations. And then some will be outside of the detail of that in the budget. Things like some contracts that you don't often write into a budget. But curriculum, for example, we'll put that in the budget and that will be appropriated. So.
I'm supportive of this for 3 reasons. First of all, we have a budget, and this is a great question to ask during our budget process to say when we are looking at our estimated current year, how many expenditures fell within this dollar amount. I think the second reason I'm comfortable is because we do an audit every year. An auditor is going to flag, you know, expenditures that are falling in this large amount that's slightly below the expenditure level. And then the third reason is financial reporting from our bond committee. I actually don't have any concerns about the way we've reported in the past because it has been down to the penny. I've been able to see the spend down on our previous bond in a level of detail that I've been really comfortable with. And so I have no doubt, and it sounds like these conversations have happened already, that same level of detailed reporting will continue to happen. And I feel like sometimes we think transparency means throwing all of the information out there, but I actually think that makes it more confusing for the community to understand the big picture. And if we look at the size of our budget, like this school district spends almost $450,000 a day from our general fund. And so sometimes when we look at dollar figures like this, it can seem really high because we just instinctively want to relate it back to our personal budgets. But if we really put it in the whole scheme of the work that we're asking staff to do, I also recognize that we meet monthly, and I don't think they want to bring small contracts to us and have to be delayed on a monthly meeting schedule. And I would not want to meet more frequently just to have a dollar amount that seems more reasonable based on our personal understanding of budget. And so for all of those reasons, I'm supportive of this. And I just think that it's on all of us to ask those questions when we are approving a budget, when we're receiving the audit findings, when we're getting updates from the Long Range Planning Committee, to use that as our moment to be really clear about what those expenditures are.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
One more thing.
Yes.
And I think too, it's important to think about the importance of sometimes some of our purchases are timely. And I know that's what brought this whole conversation up was Colin. He had these, sometimes there's like, he gets these deals on these laptops or whatever. And it's literally, if you don't respond within that time frame, they're not going to be there. So taking that opportunity, having the ability to do it, it's not that it happens every day. It's just we have that ability to do it, and Colin's not going to miss out. And in the long run of the bond, we're going to save money over time. And it just gives us that more flexibility. And I agree, there is those checks and balances, and we are transparent about it, but it just gives us that freedom to make those choices when we need to make them.
If I could elaborate on that, since COVID, there's been inventory logistics issues, and then just the political climate, tariffs, and the most pressing changes at the moment is just the demand for AI, and we're seeing memory prices go up 100%, storage going up 150%. As an example, last year, 1 terabyte hard drive was around $55, and now it's $160. And all of these companies, they've just pivoted to this high profit margin sectors at the moment. And what we're used to in IT, having an annual cost of increase, has suddenly become every 6 months, quarterly, and in some cases monthly. And that's a conversation that we've been having, where should we, approach the board to replace 2 classrooms worth of laptops and wait for the monthly meeting? Or if there's a deal going on, should we call a special meeting for that approval? Or the other thing we were thinking about is, can we ask for authorization for, say, purchasing for $1.5 billion for the next 12 months, so that we have more flexibility, but really just want to be respectful of your time, but also understand that, at least on the technology front, prices are just moving very quickly. And we try to be very conservative and responsible with our funding. And we oftentimes try to get the end of season deal and also not overbuy and hold it in storage. So it is a delicate balance.
I'll do one last interruption because Con's far too modest. The proposed purchase of cameras this month, waiting until next month, would cost the district an extra $50,000 to $100,000. So that's just one little example of where Con and his team are working very diligently to try to get those things done, everything very thoughtfully and not rushing anything, but saying this is the right decision at the right time.
Thank you for that. Any other questions?
I just want to say that I think everyone here appreciates the work that you do, understands that you do it very well, and wants to make sure that you have the flexibility to act fast on these things. I don't think that is under debate. For me, I want to get you all of those things. I also want to know how to respond to people when they say, what has been purchased under, policy DJ.
And I really appreciate you being so thorough as a board and engaging in and asking hard questions and the right questions. I will also say, in terms of transparency, the public can request any purchase record, and they do. We often get ones that say, what are all the things you've purchased in the last year? And then it takes us about 50 hours to fill that public records request. So all of that is public records and available for anyone who does want to know, what are all the items, that you have purchased, as a school district. Whether we put that up front, blast it somewhere, or we wait for someone to request it, it is transparent, it is available for the public. Any purchased item that the district makes can be publicly requested.
Any other discussion? All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
Thank you. Director Wyatt. Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll get new microphones with that purchase.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Last on the agenda is public comment on related or non-board agenda. So we have Becca Puskas.
Is it okay? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about required instructional hours, and I just want to start out by saying I appreciate all of you are already up to speed on this issue and your comments at the beginning of the meeting. It's been in the media a lot the last few weeks, and I think it's really important because it's a minimum standard for education in Oregon. I think we all need to know where we stand. And Dr. Ledwig, I really appreciate the information you put together and shared as to where we are at with our instructional hours. So that's really helpful. And all of that is to say that a lot of what I prepared, I'm going to kind of throw out and just focus on two things. Number one is what the rules before last week required in terms of instructional hours. And number two is this executive order and the new rules, which I agree is sort of a mess and I think leaves a lot of questions. So as to the first issue, I just want to point you to what I highlighted in that first handout. And it lists the required hours on page 1 for each grade level. And then if you flip it over on the back, it says that the school board, section 6 of the rule, must approve counting professional development, conferences, and I think recess and some other things, if that is going to be used to meet the minimum hours requirement. And I think what the state is doing is very clearly putting in your hands as a school board approval of us deviating from that minimum standard and having a shorter school year for any grade level. I think the policy purposes of that is that the board can discuss it, the board can take community comment, get input, that we're actually shortening the school year for our students. And that can be for a good reason, for budget reasons, for professional development, for whatever else it is, but that there is discussion and an actual school board approval of that exemption. I don't think that has happened. And what I see from the data that Dr. Ledwig shared, I think we're probably fine for elementary and middle school, but we would need a board approval for high school. And what I'd like you to think about is, you know, when you approve that school calendar, just having a reference to a rule in a policy is not a school board approval. And I think I'd like you to think about whether you still need to do that. For me, it's sort of an issue of trust. I think after the school closures discussion, which I wasn't really affected by directly or part of very much, I think some of you asked the community, you know, how do you earn our trust? And I think in that case, there was a vote that we wouldn't close schools for 2 years, and then we had to change the vote. I think in this case, it would be saying, no, we didn't approve that. We didn't have a discussion of it. We didn't know what the numbers were, but we're going to have that explicit discussion now. And going forward, we're going to track where we are. And I didn't get to my second point, but I'd be happy to discuss it with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Athena Contreras.
Hello. So I just kind of wanted to go over a change that was made, a memo that was sent out last July by the Department of Education, which detailed that the expenditures by fund were no longer required. And in our comprehensive annual report, financial report. And here's the thing is that we are going through a period of where trust is a big issue. And I think that as I'm sitting here thinking about the logistics of handling a lot of money and, you know, a small amount of money in the big scheme of things, it doesn't seem like that bad, but it does seem like it's kind of an odd choice to do it right in the middle of removing our ability to look at expenditures by fund. And it was not required, but it was not required to take it out of our financial report. Yeah, it did come out of our financial report. So I think, you know, all of these things, they start to add up, and you have a lot of different people asking a lot of questions from a lot of different areas. As I was looking through last month's board meeting, I was looking at the litigation fees that were transferred over, and they were not transferred over until next year. So if that did get appealed, it seems like an odd choice to put it in this year, along with the 1.2 million that was used for the fields in a year where we're facing so many difficult budget decisions. I don't understand why we're adding in the softball courts at Riverside for 1.2 million when we're trying to save that by closing 2 schools out of our general fund. I don't know if that gets fixed later. You guys did not explain that clearly. I did not see that. It seems like anything coming out of the general fund at this point, it's just not logical. You have Abendlander, you're going to sell it. Wait till you get the funds. Then the other thing is that as I'm watching our revenues go up every year, and I'm watching our enrollment go down every year, it still continues to go up. It's still continuing to go up next year. And as our property values, I mean, we know that we get paid more when they subtract it. That's how they get the numbers. So we actually get more state school fund if we didn't have as much of the property taxes. So things are not adding up. And I think that there needs to be a lot more openness and answering of questions, and maybe something where we could present a lot of the questions that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and our last on the public comment is Mr. McCabe.
What's not on this, John McCabe, Westland, Oregon, is going back to, it was eliminated earlier this year not to have pre-K. And so I contacted Oregon Department of Education. There's been a program since 2016 where any families that have 400% of value or less, 4% of poverty rate gets pre-K for free. It just has to be applied for by your school district. Westland has never applied for that program since it began in 2016. And if you take basically all the students that ended up being national merit, without a doubt, they all were in pre-K, like in Westland schools. Why are we giving it up? Then also, we're supposed to, the business office or the business administration, the administration of the school district is supposed to inform the school board each month any changes in the financial position of the school district. So what was published this month on the 7th is that we're going to get an additional $1.5 million for the year 24-25 because we overstated how much we were going to collect in property taxes, and once the audit was done, it came back, well, we got $1.5 million more. That has not been told to the public. We hear about the 10 million loss, but we don't hear about the $1.5 million gain. In addition to that, on March 2nd, they published that essentially we were told that the public's been told that we're going to get $2 million less from ODE. We're not. We're getting $250,000 more than last year. And it really starts becoming a problem when you look at the budget. It's like, maybe we're not spending this right because our teachers, we're losing them more than we're losing students. Classroom sizes going up, we have a problem. And then the other last one is, I didn't know it was going to be approved, but if you want to change the dates, to my knowledge, there were dates that were already published for the budget. Those dates are, you can change them, but you have to do it 30 days in advance, which means nothing can happen before May 21st for even the budget message. And you need to go back, or or you can spend thousands of dollars mailing out to everybody what you voted on today. So please go back and change it before this meeting ends and stay within the state law. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So our next regular board meeting is May 4th, and we have a special work session scheduled for May 13th. All right.